Not in front of my eyes, please, Thera asked the spirits around her, the density of them becoming a distraction as she did her best to use her newfound free time, taking hunting quests in the untamed lands. Since Ben had a gate that connected directly to a well-used guild, it made the most sense and allowed her to find the sort of work that a place like Stonewall wouldn't offer. While her home was concerned with granting quests taking place in the immediate area, anywhere on the Gate network could have anything, including information on demon herds in need of clearing out, giving her a useful task she could do on any of the many days she now didn't need to bother with hospital work, with her services being immediately desirable. Usually, if something was deep enough out then, unless there was a space mage to help, the chances of finishing on the same day were typically non-existent. Anything close enough to the gate to be killed the same day would typically be found and dealt with, unless of course a swarm had caught them by surprise, but even if she herself couldn't teleport, she was less limited by distance than others. She could fly under her own power, which meant she could move as fast as she could think, and with the aid of Ben's circlets, that could be very fast indeed, to the point that she'd begun to need to keep a barrier up around her to prevent the feeling of the air and any bugs that might have been in it from turning the journey into a nightmare. With the strength of her mana and her magic, it felt like the entire world was in her reach and made sure that, no matter where she was asked to go, she'd always be home by dinner. Not that hunts were always successful, but that was to be expected. A swarm would move after all, and the demon's hungry and destructive nature tended to mean that by the time a report made its way back to the guild, as often as not they were long gone, sometimes able to be tracked and sometimes not. But it looks like this is going to be one of those easier times, Thera told herself. At least in the sense that I'm not going to be spending hours searching for them. While she had found the group only a little ways off from where she'd been told to expect it, it seemed that the initial reports had severely underestimated the size of them. What had been reported as only 100 was at least double that, the invading monsters having cleared a section of land of any life, no animals or plants to be seen, leaving only dirt in their base as they fought amongst themselves in what seemed to be their downtime. So potentially not the most driven group, she thought as she observed them, hearing one loudly swear out in world speak as its arm was ripped off by another in a way that still left her uncomfortable. She knew they were technically people, the system qualified them as such and they were undeniably sapient, but hearing them use language still felt fundamentally wrong, even if a few words being tossed out by them was a common enough occurrence by that point, with only a spirit by her ear breaking her from her thoughts. "Princess, shall we assist?"
No.
"At least not yet," Thera said back with her mana, lest any of those monsters on the ground below overheard her. She was still wrapped in her barrier, so there was no chance of any smells leaking out, and while there was always the risk of being spotted, she was high enough up that it wouldn't be an immediate worry. No need to risk giving herself away with a careless word. "If I end up needing help, I'll ask you all when the time comes." After all, she had plenty of options to choose from for how to dispatch them, even when there were so many, and she started with one that matched her goals. She took her life magic and twisted it into death. Two magics with the same endpoint, she was officially at what could be called the final stage of life magic, anything further venturing into the territory of souls, and, since both Ben and the gods seemed to want her to achieve such a thing, she still needed to practice it. Practice she'd done to death for the more traditional spells. She couldn't think of many injuries she hadn't healed, and she treated plenty of illnesses by that point as well, leaving only to focus on a more underutilized aspect of her training as she reversed it, using the death spells shoved into her brain and applied life mana to them, casting them down below and watched as most of the demons perished before they could understand that anything was wrong. Her power was simply too great, and in a surprise attack like that, it was hard to defy. She could see the handful of survivors looking around, trying to understand what had happened, but only one looked up before the rest met their end. What death spells couldn't accomplish, Earth could, and she got to stare down from above as the ground swallowed them up, crushing them into paste and leaving no question of their defeat as notifications echoed in her head. Spiritual mana enhancement level increased. Earth inclination level increased. Intelligence enhancement level increased. Mana empowering level increased. A good result, both of her effort and the benefits she had. She still didn't know how much Ben's authority bracelet was doing, but despite the names of them, she was finding herself more and more happy to take it. But there was one other too, flying around her at all times. The soul spirits, hidden among all of the others. When she'd asked them to support the healers they saw, both to ease Mora's mind and to help the planet as a whole, it had left her admitting to herself that it would be for the best if she took any help she could get from them as well. She didn't know if Mora had been using his magic on her and she wouldn't have asked him to, but the soul spirits? It felt far more harmless of a favor. Not that I know if even that will ever be enough to actually get there. She groaned to herself. Ben makes awakening look so easy. At the very least, using life magic as death while hunting across the world meant it was almost certainly allowing the skill to get the effects of one, if not both, of the authorities placed on her, and with Ben making sure to keep them updated, she was getting the best effects she could. Short of having another soul mage by her side to help train her, it was the best anyone could get, leaving everything else up to her, along with the ever-present question of if reaching the 3rd tier in the months they had left was even possible. Walking back to report on the quest and head home for the day, Thera stopped just for a moment to sit down, wanting to rest. While using magic didn't drain her and she hadn't done much in the way that could be called exercise, using a circlet to speed up her thoughts was always going to be a pain. One she very much doubted she'd completely get used to and left her wanting to rest her eyes in real time at the closest bench she could find. Feeling herself relax for just a moment before opening them again somewhere else, her goddess sitting before her. "Analia," she said, louder than intended out of surprise as she moved to a hasty bow, the goddess before her giving a simple chuckle at the reaction. "Child, it's lovely to see you. How have you been since we last spoke?" "I've been mostly well. Analia, it's wonderful to see you again as well." "Oh, and why just mostly?" her goddess asked with a knowing smile, having watched enough of Thera's life and heard of plenty more to give a good enough idea. Even Thera herself tried to keep it simple. "Just stress, I suppose." An answer that earned her a chuckle, the goddess unable to hide her amusement. "For whatever part of that comes from your lover's talent in making other, more foolish gods view him as a nuisance, I'll tell you not to worry too much. The young apostle has my favor. I won't allow any other gods to harm him, no matter how he chooses to grow. He's done too much for the world by this point to have to put up with that." "Thank you," Thera said. Hearing those words from the one she gave her faith lending more than its share of relief for a topic she'd been doing her best to deal with. Even if things seemed fine, she knew all too well that Ben didn't view gods as a force above him and, as a result, was seen in a worse light for that fact by many, even before his many questionable skills were considered. "In that case, I really am fine. I'm doing my best to live up to the expectations on me, and I'm trying to make you proud." "Sweet girl, I'm always proud. And when it comes to expectations, try not to worry too much. I know there's been talks of the hope that you'd reach the 3rd tier in the past, but there's plenty we hold those hopes for. If you can't do it in the time left, then there's no shame." "But I still need to try," Thera sighed. "I wonder how much easier it might be if I were part life spirit instead. My life affinity is pretty low and has to be coming entirely from my mom's side. If its value were over 100 instead, then maybe I'd already be there." "Perhaps," Analia admitted. "But then, there's no reason to dwell on such thoughts. You are you, perfect as you are, and who knows? If you do cross that final threshold yourself, then you can start working on seeing how much easier getting your earth magic to the same level might be." I think having one unrealistic goal is enough for now. But is there a reason for the visit? Is there something I can do for you? I suppose you could think of it that way, yes. Thera, are you aware that of all of my children, none currently have an awakened charm? No, I wasn't. There's nothing wrong with that fact. I'm well aware that on this world it's viewed as a curse for how it's limited everyone's options for dealing with the wider planet, but it does have its uses, even if others have some complicated feelings on it. Uses I'd like to teach you. I'm sorry, what do you mean? Just because it's become a part of your dark magic doesn't mean it no longer exists. You have your control and you're awakened for it. So, Thera, let me teach you how to use that innate power. Thera's first instinct was to decline. Even if she'd use her charm from time to time for the convenience of it, it still wasn't a power she exactly liked having, the years of suffering under it having left enough of a mark to make the idea of doing anything with it feel distasteful, even if she knew that was a foolish, rash reaction. There was her goddess, offering to personally teach her something. She couldn't just listen to a gut reaction. While the way she viewed gods overall had admittedly grown more complicated in the last few years, she trusted Analea implicitly, with her goddess lightly chuckling as she listened to all of those thoughts go through her head. I understand your concerns, child, but it's just a spell I want you to learn. Nothing more. Whether you choose to use it or not is up to you, but learning it at the very least will do you no harm. I'm sorry, I understand that. Of course I'll learn it. Wonderful, she smiled, full of nothing but love and warmth. I assure you, should you choose to employ it, then it will serve you well. While a measure of skill is needed for it, hence why I can only teach to my awakened children. Given your own power, I'm sure you'll be able to display it in a way comparable to myself. All right, so what is it? You remember when the demi-demons were discovered, yes? Before they were found, I'd lured in a group of demons for your little lover to look at. It may have seemed as though I'd found them ahead of time and simply directed a charm out towards them, and while I will admit I was aware of their presence, what I actually did was a bit more complex. What I used then and what I'll teach you now is a selective charm, able to narrow in on a species or, if you truly master both your magic and this spell, even a specific target to drive them to you, leaving the rest of the world unaffected. While not perfect, given the demon's frankly annoying level of adaptability, what I'm looking to teach you is a way you can selectively draw in demons anytime you go out. After the lesson, learned far easier than expected for how her intelligence had been so significantly raised, Thera reported on her quest before going back out into the untamed lands, wanting to test what she'd been taught. Getting out as far as she could, she got the spirits with her to confirm there were no people in the area before she worked on assembling her spell and binding it to her soul, prepared for something to go wrong and getting it. As soon as her mana was charmed, she heard the woods come alive around her, everything starting to move her way, and left her to switch to a simple fear spell before she could be overrun to drive them off. All right, I understand it, which just leaves practicing till I get it right, she told herself, accepting that it would take some work. In which case, I guess I should confirm first before I waste too much time in this area. Have any of you detected any demons around? A few, a smoke spirit answered. Would you like us to lead you to them? No, thank you. It's enough just knowing some are near. With the confirmation that her efforts wouldn't be worthless there, she repeated the attempt, finding she got it wrong again. There was a reason that Analea had told her it needed an awakened holder to do it. Thera doubted she would have managed it at even the earlier levels of her dark magic, her charm weaker for having merged into the other skill than it would be if it had awakened on its own, which was admittedly exactly what she'd wanted at the time and a result she'd never regret. Still, it left grabbing hold of her success a struggle as she continued her attempts, taking all of the longer since every failure meant letting out just enough fear to keep the entire forest from flooding over to her without driving them so far away that she'd lose her targets. It felt like a delicate balancing act she was being forced to practice as she worked to spend her mana in just the right way until finally she found her success. Instead of the sounds of many creatures rushing over, the beasts of those woods likely dizzy by then with how much back and forth her magic had left them doing. She only heard a few, barely anything really, but just enough to tell her that she was getting movement towards her as, one by one, demons slowly came out of the woods to attack, with Thera already prepared and killing them all before they could gather enough sense to fight back, all the while examining the effects of the spell. While Analea had told her it could be used to pull in entire species or specific individuals, she'd focused on teaching Thera how to do it for demons as broadly as possible, and that was really all she intended to use it for, but she could immediately see its value. If she ever knew there was a demon nearby but just couldn't find it, she now had far better odds of drawing them out, even with the risks it added. It looks like I should be able to direct it too instead of spreading it out all around me, but the fact that this would bring any demons that fall within the range of my charm rushing towards me isn't exactly safe either, she couldn't help but admit. Even if I've been doing well against them currently, it's not like I've never struggled before, and if I were to pull in a contender then I could be in real danger. This is the sort of thing I'll need to try to use with care. But yet, she couldn't deny the use of it either. She could see why Analea went out of her way to teach her that spell, with the way she could let out passive magics, spreading them out to fill the land around her with her power. There were probably none on the world as suited to that spell's use. She could act as a central point any time she went out to lure any hidden demons in and, so long as she didn't run into any outliers, dispatch them with ruthless efficiency. And the more demons I have to fight, the more I can practice my magics too. She could already feel herself start to brush past the obvious danger such a spell held. Danger could be planned around and mitigated. She could easily have the spirits surrounding her help warn her or even dispatch any demon she pulled in, and she was well aware of the power she held. Her quests were already typically successful, failing only if she couldn't find her targets. Why not make them more so by bringing those targets and more beyond them to her? I wonder how many I'll have killed by the time this is all done? The thought casually escaped her lips. From her efforts during the second wave, it felt like she had to be in the hundreds of thousands at least, working like that in what remained till the third, and then whatever sort of slaughter she'd managed when the next wave arrived. It painted a bloody future she didn't want to imagine, instead pushing it from her mind to focus on the matter at hand. She was working to grow stronger and to help the world, and Analia had given her a powerful tool to do exactly that. She wouldn't let it go to waste. Taking the matter-energy conversion spell he'd taught Jake and absent-mindedly trying to apply it to a weapon, the force of Ben's thoughts was more devoted to a different topic. Awakening deep connection, with the fact that so many gods he'd now linked to hadn't done the job of getting it to the third tier could be nothing but a bad sign, leaving his progress feeling stalled. It wasn't like he had no ideas, of course. He could still try and fit all of the spirits of the world into his range at once to connect to, like he'd lied to Myriad about in the past, and if he could come across a mind more dangerous than a god's, then that might do it too. Even if that couldn't help seem like a horrific idea, if only for the singular example of such he could think of. Yeah, before I get myself killed, or just as likely drive myself insane trying to connect to an outsider, I need to at least think of a few different options. Especially since I can't know the effects of having whatever mental structure they hold imprinted on my mind. With thinking about it forcing him to look at what Connect was and what made it grow. It was a mind, enchanting, and soul skill, of course, a power that linked two people equally beyond some simple one-way mind reading, and it grew when it was practiced as such, or at least it had until it had reached the awakening barrier. Now though, he may have treated all of the work he put towards it like he was chipping away at it, but that didn't leave him feeling any closer. Hell, with how he'd been using it to train his sacrilege on the forbidden gods, it should have been getting the benefits of his evil and destructive affinities, not to mention the authorities they currently were and his soul affinity as well. He was basically specialized in growth by that point, yet despite every insane thing he threw at it, it still wasn't growing, meaning one of two things. Either, much in the same way as his inclinations, Connect as a class of skill was simply uninclined to reach the third tier in a way that any mortal could hope to achieve in any natural length of lifespan, or else instead, he was missing something. When he'd spoken to Myriad and Hellori about it in the past, back when he'd been struggling to get Connect to just the second tier, they'd been clear in outlining some of the problems he might have been having with it, with the main one being the other skills he had. Having other options to merge into an awakening could help lower the threshold, yet there he was, still missing plenty of good contenders. With the issue being that they were ones he could never get. While he could hypothetically learn mind reading as a non-affinity skill for its compatibility, he didn't care about doing something that would help raise the mind aspects. What he wanted was to raise the enchanting and soul ones. He already had the enchanting, and on that front, there really wasn't anything else for him to gain, pointing the issue squarely on the soul half of the equation. There was no real denying it. With Connect being a soul skill, that meant the biggest ones a person could get to help lower it was almost certainly either life or death magic, the precursor to proper soul magic, and was clearly involved in other third-tier awakenings to one extent or another, such as Faust's true shifting or his teacher's soulsmithing. Two magics he would never get. Which means, short of finding a way to get either, I'm left banging my head against the wall, he admitted, instantly feeling as other parts of his mind tried to work through any hypothetical way he might get those magics before pushing them to the back of his head for the impossibility of it. Which isn't a real solution. What I've been doing, no matter how crazy and extreme, continues to not work. I need a different option. With his authorities telling him how to best raise his sacrilege through what he inflicted on Harrow's soul, he turned them towards seeing if there was anything more he could do to that trapped god that would improve Connect instead, but found minimal in the way of raising that skill's experience gain. Not nothing, yet so marginal that it didn't change the original scope of the problem beyond making sure those skills were aimed at Connect at all times too, in case anything might spring up. As far as options go, The most feasible one would be to start practicing some of my less ethical connect-derived skills on a living god instead of just their soul, but that would obviously cause problems, he admitted, knowing that for as many lines as he might have been willing to cross when it came to the gods. Now that he was the future god of sacrilege, evil, and destruction, he couldn't do anything like that to any deity unless he was both certain it would work and certain he could come up with grounds to get away with it, which is basically the same as still having no options. He thought about it from every angle he could before giving in to the truth. A few potential ideas, but they were all slim and inadvisable, leaving him to sigh at the same time Thera came through the gate. "Well, one of you doesn't seem too happy," she said, seeing his true body working on the gun, as well as a clone acting far more cheerful with the kids. "What's going on? Despite all of my power, the world still won't bend to my whims and I'm taking personal offense to it. So the usual then? Maybe a bit more than usual, but yeah. Also made a cool new gun. That somehow feels more worrying. It might be, we'll have to test it first. Come on, let's give it a quick look." He took her hand and stepped just outside of the shop doors before materializing a bullet and took aim at the sky, watching as all of its mass was converted to energy as a beam of light was shot off, Thera needing no clue to guess what it was as she looked at it with narrowed eyes. "The freaky spell you taught Jake? The very same. Do I even want to know how powerful it's going to be? There's a reason I didn't set up a target in the shop to shoot at. I don't know how many walls it would go through before fading away. Matter has a lot of energy trapped inside of it. This feels too dangerous for you to mass produce." "Oh, you're definitely right on that front," he agreed as he broke it down into atoms, having the design in his head if he ever needed to remake it. "Give these to soldiers during the next wave and sure, they'll kill a lot of demons, but odds are just as good that it will carry through and hit someone it shouldn't on the other side of the circle. This is a hell of a lot of energy, and it would definitely go far." She shook her head, happy at least that he was showing some sense about a weapon like that before going on. "Well, I guess you're not the only one who figured out something dangerous today. Analia got in touch and taught me a spell." "No kidding? Mind if I check it out?" he asked, tapping the side of his head and getting her consent. "Go for it." He peeked into her memories, seeing the conversation with Analia where she was taught the spell as well as her own practice learning it before taking the structure and applying it as an enchantment, materializing a ball to place it on. "Interesting," he muttered. "Interesting as in you just made all of the work I spent learning it look like nothing? I was only able to do this because of the work you spent on it, but no. Interesting because honestly, even if it needs an awakened skill to use, this normally shouldn't be a very good spell, at least relative to the level needed to pull it off. It's limited to the normal range of a succubus's charm, and while that's enough to cause some chaos in a normal town or city, for hunting it actually isn't that great unless the target is already close. Not bad, especially if you're looking to keep something specific from escaping or make something go to you without it realizing that's what's happening. But not incredible either. Your strength makes this a far more viable spell. I can see why Analia wanted you to learn it." "Ah, well, it does seem handy," she admitted, pleased with the compliment to her strength while Ben kept looking at her. "And I saw you were training your life magic too, trying to make it act like death to try and awaken it. I mean, you did personally say you want me to try and become a soul mage in front of a bunch of gods. I do genuinely have to try when there's expectation on me." "Fair," he nodded, falling silent once more before coming to a conclusion on his own and nodding as he did. "All right, let's try to shove a bit more knowledge in your head. I think you missed a step in your explanation." "Okay, my bad. If you're going to become a soul mage one day, it would make sense to give you all of the soul spells I know from both my reading, as well as from Yuzu and Elvit. A bit of preemptive learning couldn't hurt." "Well, okay, if that's all dash. But that's not all," he stopped her. "A thought, one I've already applied to Jake. But in all honesty, I can't see a reason it shouldn't hold true for you. Considering the way he talks about the way you taught him, I'm officially a little worried. It's fine, just something to test. Obviously, you can't use the spells of a proper soul mage right now, but then that's not all there are. If you can use death spells, then why not some of the minor or low soul spells the demons use? Are you seriously about to teach me demon magic? Sure, why not? I've been in enough of their heads to know the spells by this point, and this could be a path to getting you closer to your own awakening. Besides, even if demons are monsters, it's not like their magic is inherently evil. Fine, she gave in. Then, are you shoving it directly into my head? Did it the second you said fine, but we still need to go over it, meaning you're getting quizzed. You may now know it, but you need to be aware that you know it. I wonder if there's any point that everything you've shoved to my head will translate to a knowledge skill? She sighed. With everything you've been forcing in there, I feel like I'm due. Ha, then on those grounds, the entire world might be due by this point, which is actually an interesting thought. I wonder if all of the information I gave is going to impact the rate of knowledge and mind skill acquisition across the planet. Add in the fact that I boosted everyone's intelligence by a few thousand points, and the odds feel pretty good. When I go for my next round of soul modifications, I'll have to examine everyone's skills too to look for changes. As things are, I have a pretty healthy understanding of what skill distribution looks like across all races and locations across the planet, which is all very interesting and off-topic to what you're about to do. He materialized a sheet of questions as he ended, leaving her to sigh. Even if she complained, she knew he was right, and, at the very least, it lent him some comfort. He may have been having no luck getting the awakening he wanted, but that didn't mean he couldn't help Thera on her way to hers, leaving him to just hope they'd both find their success in the time they had left. Deep calming level increased. Mora, I've decided. Delaire began once she arrived that day. Today we're making a sword, the biggest one we can. Why? The soul spirit asked, not seeing the point and getting a shrug in return. Because it'll be fun. Now come on, let's get started. She pulled the boy with her to gather materials while Ben and Thera watched from the side. Thera raising an eyebrow while Ben just chuckled. Does Delaire always take charge like that? Ha, sometimes. Depends on if I want to give them any specific projects to work on or a free day. Does Mora ever decide? She's asked him before. In general, it seems like he's happy to let her decide things though. I wouldn't worry about it. Well, alright, but how big of a sword do you think is going to qualify as the biggest one they can? Well, dash. The answer was given in a slightly different manner as the two came back out, both of them carrying as many ingots as they could hold, even if Mora's strength meant his were piled far higher, leaving the two to stack them to the side of the forge. From the looks of it, big enough that I'm going to need to create more metal to replace some of our stock. Ben finished, letting the two of them get started by themselves, even as he kept watch through a nearby clone, with his true self focused on Thera. Still, it should keep them busy for the day while we focus on you. We've got a wedding coming up. What do you want to wear? I have no clue. I know about succubus weddings, but that's not really the impression Greed gave me when he was inviting us, and for some completely unexplainable reason that I'm sure had nothing to do with their scary daughter. Any political weddings my parents were invited to while I was growing up always made a point of not including children. Alright, well I'm sure this one will be fun. Let's see, he said to wear anything, but since we should at least try to look nice, let me whip a few things up for you. Any preference in color? Let's go with a dark blue. Alright, some dark blue dresses, coming up. He materialized a range of styles, basing them largely off of ones he remembered from Earth, even if he made sure to add his own bit of personal flair to each of them, with each one on a mannequin, letting her look them over in a way that would let her see how they'd fit as she gave her impression. They're beautiful mostly, she told him, largely liking them but veering away from one that only had one shoulder. But why only dresses? Because apparently, I was thinking too much about what I'd seen from Earth weddings. Hold on, I can make you some other options. No, this is fine. I don't wear too many, so this will be a nice change of pace. Although, if you can do this so easily, then maybe I should get you to help update my wardrobe sometime. Sure, I've got some decent designs in my head I think you could make look real nice. For now though, any style that really stands out to you, we can adjust the shade and shape a bit on the fly if you pick a base to work off of. Let's say this one then, she told him, pointing out the peplum dress, having shoulders but no sleeves and a length going just past her knees, with a strip of fabric adding a bit of frill at the waistline. I think that would be my top pick. As for the color, okay, just read my mind and go with the shade of blue I'm thinking instead of making my fumble to try and describe it. Ha, can do. Taking his peek, he remade the dress to her desires, watching her smile when she saw it. I really like that. I think it's perfect. And you then? What are you going to wear? Considering that I doubt anyone else would wear anything that looks like what a human would probably wear to a wedding, I guess I'll go with something simple dash. Wait! She stopped him. Let me see what a human would wear to a wedding. Sure, if you're interested, he said, materializing a new mannequin to match his proportions with a simple gray suit on it. In my part of Earth, at least, it would be something like that. You'd get black, gray, or darker blues for the suit jacket and pants usually, though the undershirt might have a bit more variety, and that would be something you'd see on both the wedding party and guests, though guests can also wear a dress shirt instead and whatever they go with. A general rule of thumb would typically be to avoid wearing the same colors as the wedding party. Okay, you've got to try this on for me. I can't imagine what you'd look like with it. Alright, if you really want. Just a moment. He created a privacy screen around him since there were kids in the room, as well as a chance that someone might pass through any of his open gates before pulling off his clothing and materializing the same outfit directly onto his body before stepping out to let Thera look. Getting to see as she smiled for a moment before it cracked, breaking out into laughter. You know, I really don't want to take this from someone whose traditional outfit is togas, he told her. On Earth, they'd be considered very 2,000 years out of date. Sorry, she said, raising her hand to try and calm down. It's not that it looks silly. Okay, it looks a little silly. It's just more seeing you wear it. Ouch. You know what I mean, she told him, laughing again. You wear jackets and t-shirts and more rings and armbands than anyone else I know. Watching you try to look fancy is very different. This is really what humans wear to weddings. Specifically in my culture and specifically men, but yeah. Then I can't imagine what women must wear. You want to see for yourself then? He asked, nodding her towards the privacy screen he'd made. Let's see how you like it then? Depends. Is this something I'm going to be able to figure out how to put on? Doesn't matter. I'll just materialize it on you. Okay, fine. Let's see what you've got then. She stepped through and undressed, letting Ben cast his magic to poke his own fun but lost the chance as she stepped back through, wearing a wedding dress and taking his breath away, a reaction she completely missed. As soon as she came out, she looked down at herself before bursting into laughter again, all the harder, holding onto his jacket to support herself as she did. Your people do not seriously wear something like this. What do they actually wear? I'm being serious. At least for the brides, this is the sort of thing they get. Guests usually just go for nice dresses though. What's the point of this silly thin fabric covering my eyes? Well, it's a veil and I don't actually know. And this dress is so long I have entire feet of it dragging on the ground. It's supposed to make it look flowy, probably at least. I also don't really know. And why white? I'm basically as pale as the dress. Yeah, wedding dresses are just white, but this isn't a point you can go too hard against either. I know succubi and incubi each have a specific wedding color in your culture. Okay, sure, but the rest of our outfits aren't insane. Big words from someone whose outfits are, once again, togas. Togas are nice though, they're light and comfortable in the heat. With the way you're dressed, you look like you can't get married in the summer. While this one would leave me freezing in the winter, it's completely mismatched. Okay, so admittedly, suits do get warm, but the magical thing about Earth was the prevalence of temperature control. Heated buildings in the winter and those air conditioners you love so much in the summer. Get an indoor venue and you could definitely find a nice middle ground for both parties. And as for guests, well, they're ideally seeing someone they love get married. They can manage a bit of discomfort. Well, speaking of discomfort, I need to change back, and I don't think I'm getting this off as easily as you got it on. Give me a hand so I can slip back into some real clothing. All right, sure. He helped her with the dress and let her change from there, changing back himself after, before breaking both outfits down into air and dust, neither one likely to be worn again. Although Amy or Steph might want a good old-fashioned human marriage one day, maybe I should preemptively make them some dresses, just in case I'm not around to do it when they'd actually want them. Ooh, if I'm not dead, I wonder if they'd let me officiate? Having a wedding ordained by both an apostle and a god. I'm sure that would be very exciting for them. To be on the safe side, he materialized a few boxes of different styles that would fit the two off to the side, getting a curious look from Thera as he did. Some human outfits in case any of our human friends ever want an earth wedding, along with a quick recipe of ingredients from this world for an earth wedding cake. Oh, now there's an idea I can actually get behind, Thera said, her sweet tooth latching on to the idea of a wedding cake with interest that left Ben grinning. But also not the main goal for the day. We had our fun. Now what are you going to wear? Ah, like I said, I'm thinking a dress shirt. Materializing one more outfit, he made black pants along with a simple blue dress shirt, the shade a bit darker than Thera's while at the same time highlighting the edges of the buttons with gold, adding just a bit of pop that didn't go unnoticed. Matching my hair? Technically, but when I did it I was thinking more your eyes. MMH, she hummed, reaching out to take his face in her hands and stare into his own. Should I have something like that then? A little touch of violet? You don't have to just because I'm doing it. No, I think I want to. If you're okay with it, that is. Yeah, of course. Give me just a second. Instead of making a new one, he instead turned back to her dress, extracting the coloring along the trim and adding a deep violet that would match the shade of his eyes instead, nodding once it was done. Unending extraction enhancement level increased. Deep material sense level increased. There we go. Just a little bit of highlight to finish it off. We'll make a cute pair for this. Ha, it'll be fun. Probably. You think it will turn out okay? Why wouldn't it? Because it's Greed's wedding, she laughed. And the fact that you're going to be there too, there's going to be some sort of bad luck cyclone going on. It'll be fine. Greed was intentionally keeping a secret from me. We'll maybe be fine. I mean, how bad could things possibly get? Vitality enhancement level increased. Vitality recovery rate enhancement level increased. Mana enhancement level increased. Mana recovery rate enhancement level increased. Stamina enhancement level increased. Deep calming level increased. Got it. Hey Myriad, Hellori, what do you think the odds are that if I awaken my two thought skills or calming that the three'll merge together? It feels likely, but honestly, since it seems like it should be possible for me to awaken them all individually, I kind of hope they don't. Focus on your connect. I don't need you to get any more obviously objectionable skills to the third tier when you already have so many. Objectionable isn't a skill class, probably. Neither was apocalyptic until you got it. Sure, but these are all clearly mind skills, and you're talking to potentially the best mind god in the universe, Ben said, seeing the knowledge goddess with them frown. A little rude. A little accurate unless you can find a god with a more powerful mind than me, a person who by all accounts is still immortal. Raising those three up to the third tier isn't outside of the realm of possibility since I can use all three while training my sacrilege. They're falling under my authorities too. Combined with my brain power, it could happen. Again, focus on your connect, Myriad groaned. Seeing as how that's your big goal and all, you can consider anything else after you accomplish that. The cube was pushing for that skill so hard, of course, because he knew Ben was struggling with it, something that was easy for Ben to see, and left his shoulders to sag. Well, right now my options for that are to either hope for some new information to present itself in the hopes of succeeding, keep doing what I'm doing and hope it will be enough, or move on to some truly fringe, dangerous, and unethical options. I don't like the sound of that. Connect to an outsider, torture a living god instead of just one soul, maybe some other options too. It's not like I don't have choices if I get really desperate. Really don't like that, absolutely not. Fine, I can wait just a bit longer until I do anything so extreme. Continuing to smack my face against a mountain and hope it breaks it is then. Or, instead of being a crazy person, you could try and spend your remaining time doing something nice. His god tried instead. Like, you had fun playing dress up with Thera. Just break down and marry her for real. Myriad, where the hell did that come from? It came from watching you work yourself to death constantly and seeing you almost die on multiple occasions. Don't think I didn't see her leaving you speechless. Why not tie the knot in the time you have left? It's not like you don't love her enough to do it. And regardless of any hang-ups she might still have about different lifespans, she undeniably loves you too, no matter how crazy some of your actions drive her. I personally still consider that one of her best parts. Okay, cool. But no. Boo. Lame. Boring. Rude. And ignoring the childish back and forth. Hellori cut in. Why not? Seriously? Not you too. Myriad's right. You both love each other. Why not do it while you still can? Because one, I'm not going to propose just because the world is probably going to end. No offense to Greed and anyone else doing it, but it's not my thing, and two, I'm still genuinely expecting to die in the third wave. Even if the world survives after, I'm not marrying her just to leave her a widow. If the world doesn't end and I'm still alive after, then I'll have a serious look at it. Which is destined to be embarrassing. Why exactly do succubus customs demand public proposals? I'd really prefer to do it privately, maybe while on vacation. You are technically already engaged as far as the rest of the planet is concerned, Myriad pointed out. Just work off of that one and call it a day. No, because as funny as that may have been at the time, I love her, and if I'm proposing then I'm doing it for real. Now, any chance we can change the topic to something beyond my love life? Maybe some nice new disaster on the world. A city was destroyed today. Jesus, I was kidding. Holy crap. Okay. What the hell happened? And should I be waking Thera up to go help with healing? Healers across the network were already gathered, and considering it was a gate city, it was easy for them to get there. You don't need to add Thera to the mix when, unfortunate as it is to say, this is the sort of event that will hopefully drive some more levels out of them. As for what happened though, 2 new demon contenders got to it, a holder of what we think might have been an awakened soul augmentation that was successfully killed and a space magic user that got away, along with some of the others in its swarm and could be anywhere. Still, as tragic as it is to say, killing one of them and so many of the demons it brought with it is a positive, even if it doesn't make up for the cost. Oh my god. How many of these stupid things are there going to be?
Ben wondered.
And a space magic contender? That thing's gonna have the world at its fingertips. It will be unfortunately difficult to kill, Myriad sighed. Really, finding and putting down all of the contenders that made it through is a priority, but given we don't know how many of them there are, it's no simple thing. We have towns and villages occasionally disappear without a trace, but we've been trying to create mini-gate networks using your factory so that places can escape or at least get word to whatever city they're closest to, but those are still taking time and not every settlement even wants one, which makes things challenging. You didn't see anything in any of the contenders' minds you've been in. Demons aren't exactly the sort to keep friendly terms with each other. If they don't see their kin as something to be oppressed to serve them, then they're food instead. Frankly, I'm shocked just hearing 2 powerful ones work together. One had to be above the other, and considering which one lived and got away, I'm willing to make my bet. Which also might be exactly why they don't know about each other. Maybe their god didn't want them doing their whole battle for superiority thing, while there's this big beautiful world to try and dominate instead. You guys at least have any leads on the one that got away?
No, Hellori answered.
Either it has a decent mana pool or it knows a trick for hiding itself. By the time we started looking, it was already gone. God, these things are such a nightmare. What do you think the odds are that one of these contenders has reached the 3rd tier since arriving? If it's more than just the one you killed yourself, then we're already in a nightmare, the goddess told him. Even having one awaken on this world is too many, we can't deal with more. Especially since, if they are found and killed, that means we'll have to deal with them next. MMH, Myriad agreed. Not an overwhelming problem. A newly born god with no source of faith should be manageable so long as it doesn't immediately begin pulling from the other demons of the world. But we can still expect such a thing to put up enough of a fight that it would cost us an unfortunate amount of our own faith. That really would be a worst-case scenario. Yeah? Well, the fact that it already happened once makes it a lot more likely, Ben pointed out. Who's to say that the contenders that were sent weren't the closest one's own had to awakening? I still can't get why he'd want that when he has to be killing any who reach that tier, but that could be what's happening here. Well, we're all just going to have to hope that you're wrong. Besides, even if you're not, you should know better than anyone that close to awakening to the 3rd tier, is still a matter of scale. You could look at someone at the very edge of passing it in comparison to where they'd begun, but they could still be years away, if ever. A third tier isn't just going beyond your limits, it's transcending them entirely. A fact that makes you doing it 4 times all the more horrifying. Yeah, I am a sweetheart, aren't I? Not sure where you got that from anything I just said, but okay. Aside from his small deflection, though, the entire conversation tugged on a part of Ben's mind. He may not have known with any certainty that Owen wanted his contenders to awaken, but if he did, could Ben be right? As powerful as that god was and specialized in both souls and survival of all things, could he have specifically sent his contenders that were closest to reaching the third tier to that dangerous new world as a way of helping them push through that final hurdle? There was no way to know, but the thought left his stomach to drop at the notion that there might be more they'd had to deal with, the feeling not leaving him no matter how late the night wore on. "You ready?" Thera asked, her dress on now that the day of the wedding had come, needing only to drop Mora off before the two of them got going, leaving Ben to admire her while he buttoned up his shirt. "Almost, but don't worry, we'll still be there early. There's one more thing I want to do first. Better not be working when you're cleaned up so nicely." "Nah, nothing like that," he told her as he pulled a chair over to a mirror. "Take a seat. It's been a while since I've had the chance to do your hair." "What, looking to pretty me up a bit more?" she teased. "You always look beautiful. This is as much for my own enjoyment as anything else. It's just an excuse to see my lovely girlfriend with a bit of a different style." "Well, if you're going to flatter me like that, then how can I refuse?" She sat down and smiled, watching in the mirror with interest at what he would do while he ran his fingers through her hair, seeing how long it had gotten. Other than some light trimming, she hadn't had a real cut since the last time he'd done it for her to make a more powerful staff. The few years it had been growing, leaving it comfortably down her back. "Just going to play with it? Just thinking about how long it might get if you leave it for a century," he laughed. "Maybe something you should consider in the future. You could roll it up into the biggest, most unwieldy bun when you need it out of the way. If I was going to let it grow for that long, I'd just get you to make me something with a spatial effect I could store most of it in. I'm sure you could throw together something that would look nice while doing it." "True. Could be fun too. I'll make you one later if you want. I've got more than enough voidstone." What a shocking waste of one of the rarest materials on the planet. "Hey, last time Jake was here I used him to make a ton of it. If I ever run out, I'll just grab him to make more. And I'm sure he would just love hearing that," she laughed. "If you do, figure out a way to make it up to him." Maybe I could slip everything I know about swordsmanship into his head, so he could finally take advantage of that laser sword I made him a while ago. He'd probably enjoy that, so long as he was ever given the chance to use it," he told her as he got started, braiding her hair into something akin to a half-up crown but leaving it looser at the back as his fingers nimbly moved through it to get the result he wanted, leaving him smiling at the end while she looked at it. "So, what do you think?" "I think you could have had a decent job as a hairstylist if you'd wanted one," she told him, plenty pleased with the job. "Maybe I should get you to do my hair more often, at least on days when I'm not hunting or in a hospital." "Ha, that doesn't exactly leave many days." "All the more reason to get you to do it then. Let me enjoy feeling pretty on my days off." "You always look pretty," he told her, bending down to kiss her cheek before offering his hand. "Now, shall we head out?" "Sure. Let's go." Walking out, they dropped Mora off with Dallaire and Fontesh, catching just enough of his students' machinations with the boy to get the impression she was going to try and talk someone into letting them renovate their house as he and Thera went back to the shop and through one of his gates to the greater gate network beyond, leaving them looking for the one that would take them to the city they'd be meeting at and going through to the area on the other side. Being one that Ben had created the gate for, it was on the smaller side as far as cities went, but he could instantly see it was busy. No invasion point nearby meant it was a perfect place for other cities, towns, and villages to evacuate to, with the war likely having breathed life into it in a way it never would have gotten without it and left him to examine it as they walked through the streets. With the flood of people who'd moved there in the last few years, a mix of species was to be expected, but Ben couldn't help but spot a sizable dark elf population, leaving him to wonder if that was why the area had been chosen. If there was already a large dark elf community around and they were supposedly having a traditional dark elf wedding ceremony, it wasn't hard to imagine that they'd either found the easiest spot to arrange one if the location hadn't simply come down to being that was where Gennet was from. With those bits of curiosity floating around his thoughts by the time they got to their planned destination. A small cafe Greed had asked them to meet him at first, hopefully to reveal whatever the secret he was keeping was. Without finding out it's some sort of emergency. Maybe he just wants to introduce me to everyone as the guy he almost died with. That could happen. The temptation to read the crab's mind was strong, but he held off, instead grabbing a selection of food and drinks for them to eat on the patio while they waited. The two of them there early, and it gave them a view of the streets, letting them see exactly when Greed, Gennet, and the younger girl with them, who could only be Greed's daughter, arrived. Looking like she was probably around Abel's age, at least comparing how the two presented biologically, it was clear that the girl took more after her deceased mother. Her body plan was hominid to a shocking extent when compared against Greed's, with the traits she'd inherited from her father presenting in another way. Much like the crab, every inch of her was a ruby red, leaving her looking almost glass-like, even if she wasn't completely see-through. Skin, hair, and nails all held her father's sheen, with only her eyes being different, a deep black that still matched Greed's own. With just the way the three were walking together painting a subtle picture of their small family. He could see Jeeves, politely off to the side, professional and giving them some space while Greed let himself sit on Jennet's shoulder so he wouldn't be forced to try to keep up. Gennet herself looked the picture of cheer and positivity. It was plain she was excited, either for her wedding day or perhaps even to just be with her partner and his daughter, but it was the young girl who left the most to glean from. As they walked, the girl, Saf, held on to Jennet's hand, smiling subtly when the other woman spoke and looked completely at ease in the other woman's presence. Considering that from the sounds of it, they'd only known each other for a bit over a month. It seemed Greed's bride had done an exceptional job of bonding with the girl. Perhaps not a surprise coming from the woman that had left Greed to break his vow to completely swear off romance, but just went to show her personability in a way that Greed had failed completely to replicate. While every word from Gennet was met with at least a bit of smile and an active attempt at conversation. Anytime Greed added anything, even if Ben couldn't hear what was being said, it made it clear it brought a neutral expression to her face and a clipped reply, the girl coming across as completely disinterested in a way that was plain for all to see, with even Thera taking note as they made their way over. Is this seriously the best relationship Greed has with any of his kids? It's possible he might have a better one or two. This is just the one that lives with him. She is also recently orphaned, so it might just be taking some time for her to figure out how to act with him. Seems like she warmed up to his partner just fine, she pointed out. Well, yeah, he'll figure it out though, it will be fine. While we're with them, we'll just try and help smooth things over a bit, right? Well, I guess it's better than the last time we saw him with one of his kids at least. Leg, Sparkles, sorry to keep the two of you, Greed called out when they got closer, waving a claw. But glad you could make it, you cleaned up real well. Hey, wouldn't miss your wedding for the world, buddy, Ben told him before offering his hand to the others. And Gennet, lovely to see you again. Hope Greed hasn't given you too much trouble. Not more than I can handle, she laughed, giving her partner a teasing look and letting Ben move on to the last. And you must be Saf. It's a pleasure to meet you. Greed had nothing but good things to say. He wouldn't know enough to have anything bad, she told him, giving him the same neutral look as her father had been getting, but at least accepted his offered hand, even if it shaped Ben's expectations of how the day might go. Maybe she's just a little cold to strangers then? He wondered. I mean, Greed is still getting it too, but that leaves a bit of hope that she might warm up to him eventually. And I'm Thera, his girlfriend told the younger woman, offering her hand as well and getting a different reaction that immediately forced Ben to try to reevaluate if what he had gotten was really shyness as Saf looked at Thera with a mild yet clear interest, taking her hand and speaking up. Nice to meet you. Is she bad with men then? Or did I get a cooler reaction because I'm specifically her father's friend? MMH, I want to take a peek, but I don't know if looking in her or Jennet's head will give away whatever Greed's trying to keep private. Trying to be an ethical mind reader is a pain in the ass. Well, unless we're in a hurry, You want to take a seat for a bit? Ben asked them. We didn't know how much of a rush there was going to be, but I think I bought enough food and drinks for everyone. If there's no time, though, I can store them away. Oh, we should have a few minutes at least, Jeanette told him. The carriage is all ready for us, so as long as we head over to it in the next half hour, we should be fine, even if we hit any delays on the way. Okay, cool. One small thing, though. Carriage? Greed. Did you really not explain it to them when you saw them? Ah, just the one bit slipped my mind, the crab said bashfully. We're actually having the wedding in a town about an hour from here. Some of our guests should already be on their way. Greed was insistent on coming along with you, though, Jeanette happily told him, leaving Greed to wave a claw at her. Babe, please don't go outing me like that. I just thought it would be nice to enjoy the ride there with a friend I haven't seen in a bit is all. The other guests can get some of our time after the ceremony. Sides, this guy is an important fella now. If I don't sneak in some time from him, then how am I going to get any? Coming from one of the biggest musicians in the world, that feels like a bit much, Ben laughed. I'm sure you keep pretty busy yourself. Ah, well, my career does have me occupied most days, but I'm starting to slow down on the number of shows. Was doing them almost daily after I got my performance ironed out. Dropping to once a week will honestly be more than enough. Good. It seems like you could use a bit of a break. Ha! I'm not taking that from you. Saf, let me tell you, this guy here never stops, Greed said, trying to bring his daughter into the conversation and getting little for his efforts. Yeah, I've heard some of your song. Ah, the song doesn't do it justice, though. Trust me, he's a good guy to have around. He made you and Jeanette both those bracelets I came back with too. Thank you for that, by the way, Jeanette told him graciously, with both her and Saf wearing the authority bracelets he'd made, even if he couldn't spot the hairpieces on either of them. Jeanette's absence made sense, of course, when one considered that it was meant to be a wedding present and would likely show up somewhere in the ceremony. But it seemed the one Greed had made for his daughter hadn't yet been given over either. I've already been feeling some of its effects. I can't imagine how you made something like this. Oh, a bit of a trade secret. But they should already be spreading around the world now. Always happy for some friends to get them. Talking at the cafe a bit longer, eventually they left, walking together to the waiting carriage and watching Jeeves take the front seat while the rest of them piled into the back, trying to keep the conversation going, even if one of them either had little interest or simply didn't know how to participate in it. Saf keeping largely quiet even when someone tried to pull her in, with Thera being the next to make an attempt, being far more direct about it. So Saf, how do you spend your time? She tried. Work or school or just anything fun? I was originally going to try and find work, but I was told to relax for a bit, she answered, leaving Greed to lightly defend himself. I just didn't think there was a need to rush into things, you know? Life can get busier in the future. Might as well enjoy yourself now. She just shrugged at the statement, but Ben understood where his friend was coming from. If he were in Greed's position, he might have subtly tried to convince her to take it easy too, considering both the resources Greed held and what lay ahead in the future. Why would he want his daughter spending time doing work when they could all be dead in a few months? If he could support her, wouldn't it be nicer to let her relax and do what she wanted instead? Of course, a job is a way to make friends too, he admitted. Maybe talking her out of getting one is isolating her a bit? Something to consider talking to Greed about later. For the time, it seemed like Saf wasn't done, continuing to glance Thera's way before speaking up of her own volition. I like your dress, she offered, making her own small attempt at communication. And your hair. Are they common styles for your people? Oh, thank you, but no, they aren't. They might be for his though, she said, nodding Ben's way. He made the dress and did my hair since I don't really do it myself. Ah. The dress is a common enough style where I'm from, even if I tried to make it on the fancy end of the spectrum considering the occasion, Ben explained. The hair is a bit less common, but when I was a kid, well, I occasionally did hair for others and it's fun enough. He neglected to mention that he specifically was taught by his mother, who thought he might have an interest considering all of the other arts he loved. Considering that Saf had still somewhat recently lost hers, he saw nothing smart about bringing that up, but Thera took over. able to tell as well that the girl seemed more comfortable with her. If you're interested, Ben could do both for you too, she offered on his behalf. There's still time before the wedding. If you like it, then we could match. I guess there's enough time to try getting my hair done if that's really okay. She began, sounding hesitant but interested, with Ben joining in. Of course, but if you'd like a dress like that too, then there really is time for both, he said, materializing some much smaller examples of dresses on mannequins for her to look at, surprising the girl when she saw it. I'm quite the craftsman. Let me know what colors you'd like, and I can whip something up easily. Wow, she muttered, taken aback enough by the display of power to forget her earlier hesitation with him, only getting it back a second later. But, well, if it's really okay. Of course it is. Turn around and I'll start working on your hair, and you can think about what colors you'd like for the dress in the meantime. I'll get you sorted before you know it. Still not seeming confident, she turned to Jeannette, immediately getting encouragement that left her to accept, letting Ben begin working on her hair while she engaged slightly more with the conversation from there. Once they arrived, Ben and Greed stepped outside to let Thera and Jeannette help Saf with the dress in the carriage, the girl choosing white with some black embroidery in the end, and allowed Ben to take a look at the destination and feel the eyes on them once they arrived. On the edge of a small town, there was quite the crowd already waiting, gathered along an open field that sat between both the town itself and a woods on the other side of it, with tables lined up to serve food at and what looked like an area for a performance to be set up, along with more walls and a large, tarped-over area, with his observation of the grounds broken only as the three came out. It looks wonderful, he told Saf brightly. Is the fit okay? Yes, it's excellent. Thank you. She seemed a bit more bashful than before, letting Ben hope that meant she was opening up a bit to him, as well as he once more leaned towards shyness being the girl's main issue, with Greed speaking up as well. You look downright incredible, Saf. You really pull it off. Thanks. Instantly withdrawn again, it didn't stop Greed, something on the crab's mind distracting him from his daughter's cold attitude. But with that done, Sparkles, you mind joining my girls to help Jeannette with any setup she needs? I want to have just one last word with Legs before we get started. If you don't mind, Jeannette, I'd be happy to help. Thera agreed before focusing back on Ben. I'll find you in a bit then? Sounds good. And baby, Jeannette said, if I'm getting ready, remember what you're doing. All you have to do is follow what the Master of Ceremonies says during it and things will turn out fine. You got it, babe. It'll be great. So don't worry and get ready for a lifetime of marital bliss. He waved them off as he said it, leaving only him and Greed in that moment as Jeeves went off to find a slightly better spot to park the carriage. So, Ben asked, did I misunderstand? Or do you not know what you're doing for your wedding? I mean, kind of not, but she said it was just following along with the ceremony guy, so it should be easy. I'm a performer, Legs. I'm not worried. About that, at least. So, I want to quickly have a chat about the little secret in my head I was keeping from you. And I'm immediately worried. But okay, let's hear it. Nah, no, it will probably be fine. Really, Greed told him. And I want you to know that even if you say no, it's not like this is the only reason I was inviting you and all. I just kind of figured that it would be harder for me to decline if I'm put on the spot. I was trying to find a way to say it that doesn't make me come off so shitty. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's fine, Greed. You're my friend. I'll hear you out. So what is it? Okay, so the thing is, and I want to stress I really don't think anything is going to happen, but seeing as you're a mind reader and all, I was just hoping that you might be up for going around and making sure I'm not murdered during this. All right, Ben told him. Let's start with the basic questions. Who do you think is going to try and murder you, and why did you think it was a good idea to wait till now to tell me? I wasn't going to say no, man, and this has definitely put a huge crunch on possible solutions. I know. I'm sorry. I'm just full of wedding and parenting stress. Both for the first time, I might add. I didn't know how to bring it up and I thought you'd take longer making my things and I panicked and left before I could mention it, but on the plus side, those other assassination attempts I've dealt with recently probably just have me paranoid and on edge. I'm sure it will be fine. Okay, so you're overthinking it and there's probably nothing to worry about, you just want me to double check. I can do that. Well, I probably wouldn't go that far either. Greed. Ugh. Legs. I've told you I'm trying to be a better man and make up for some of my past. But my past keeps coming to bite me in the ass. Greed cried. If it's not my kids wanting me dead, then it's their mothers, but I've been reaching out to try and make things right, and Jeanette thought to show that I was serious about the attempt that it would be a good idea to invite them to the wedding. Give us a little chance to mingle, but some of them brought their mothers, and at least one of those bastards is gonna try and murder me, I just know it. Okay, and you said this was Jeanette's idea? Are you seriously? Genuinely sure she hasn't started wanting you dead? Since I last read her mind, and gathering all of your kids here wasn't just her method of arranging it while keeping her hands clean?
No.
I mean, probably not, at least. I have absolute faith in her, but now that you've put the stupid idea in my head, if you give her a teeny tiny look, and if that was her plan, then you can do me a favor and call off the wedding. Okay. But otherwise, you just want me looking in people's heads, and if I see anyone plotting anything, I'll stop them? Discreetly, Greed clarified. Ignore what I just said and stop putting that evil in my head, because I know Jeanette isn't trying to kill me, and this is an important day for her. Well, for both of us, obviously. But it's my baggage and I don't want it affecting her. So if you could just try and stop anyone you find as discreetly as you can, it would mean the world to me. Ben pinched his brow, taking a breath before trying to put a confident look on his face. All right. All I need to do is keep you alive without disturbing the wedding. How hard could it be? You were definitely right at the beginning, you're just overstressed. Nobody is going to try to murder you, so there's going to be nothing for me to do. It will be fine. Right, it will be completely fine. Greed laughed. Neither of them completely believing it. All right, it looks like Jeeves is coming back and he'll hand me off to the master of ceremonies, so you just have a quick wander, and then no matter what you find, do your best to convince me everything is fine and that I was just overreacting. At least until the wedding is over. Then you can break the cold, hard truth to me if you feel like ruining my day. It will be fine, Ben said again, as much for his own sake as for the others, as he handed the crab off and watched as he was brought over to a well-dressed dark elf, leaving him to his new task at hand. After all, how bad could it be? He asked himself as he stretched out his connect as far as it could go and, without moving a single step, instantly got 3 hits who had come with ill intent. This suddenly feels like it's going to be a very long day. With those only being the ones in his range, there was a vast field full of people to check still to the best of his abilities, and with every moment he wasn't moving a chance for someone's nefarious plans to succeed, Ben got started, walking around to see what schemes were afoot. I want to be sick. He hadn't even checked everyone. He'd only walked from one end of the field to the other without doing any real weaving to get anyone who stood outside of his range, nor had he had the chance to check anyone still coming in. Yet he'd found 47 people so far who had their eyes on Greed's life, and worse, it wasn't even just his exes and children. A couple individuals in the world's music scene had come who held umbrage with him for one reason or another. Either a dangerous lover Greed had stolen in the past that the crab had no memory of, or others who didn't like the intense level of competition that the holder of an awakened music skill brought, but the worst of all was that it didn't even end with Greed's invites. There were more than a few on Janet's side who didn't want to see such a sweet girl marry someone with such a poor reputation, even if it meant getting a bit of blood on their hands, and left him crouching down, rubbing at his temples as he did. This is fine, he muttered. This is manageable. I just have to stop at least 47 people, and who am I kidding? The real number's going to be at least 10 more by the time I'm actually done. Round it up to 60 then. I just have to stop that many from killing Greed on his wedding day. Okay, there's a chance that with that many trying, then more than a few are going to get in the way of each other, but seeing as it would be insane to depend on that, looks like I'm starting now and hoping nobody has any immediately dangerous plans in the meantime while I'm dealing with this. It will all be fine. With one subtle solution already appearing in his head, at least, subtle enough as far as he was concerned, as he walked back the way he came, connecting to the various would-be murderers directly into their minds to scare them all into behaving. Hello there. He thought at them loudly, and getting to see more than a few in the crowd jump. This is the Apostle of Myriad, the very same Apostle of Myriad who went and modified your souls recently. So lovely to see you again. Now, you may be wondering, what am I doing here inside of your head? And to that, the answer is simple. I'm here to tell you to stop, lest I be forced to stop you. I do not care about your relationship with Greed. When the wedding is done, you are free to yell at him, swear at him, Call him a bastard or a son of a bitch if you really want to, but you will do no more than that. This is your option. Now, will you listen, or will you argue with the representative of a god? Of the ones in his range, all of them bent. None could stand firm in their murderous conviction when it was no longer a private matter, let alone when the gods of that world had been invoked. And feeling them all fold so easily left him to breathe just a little easier, even if he didn't stop there. Already in their minds, he applied just enough of his deep calming to keep them from looking on edge during the ceremony, while at the same time used his magic to destroy what hidden weapons they held. He could do nothing about the magics they possessed, but blades were both rusted and dulled to nothing. Hidden bows snapped, and poisons examined and neutralized, just in case any of them found their fire again when he wasn't around, letting him make his way through the crowd, one by one giving his message to keep them under control and allowing himself to think that, just maybe, things would be easier than he thought. He was shocked by the sheer number he'd found with murder on their minds, but no would-be killer was prepared to be revealed so completely. He spooked everyone he'd spoken to, and it gave a sense of confidence about the rest, right until a new person stepped into his range. One who had already put their murderous plan into motion. Ben hadn't looked too deeply in anyone's head other than the ones with murder on their mind, meaning that he hadn't learned much of what a dark elf wedding entailed, but it seemed that one of Greed's exes had at least done a bit of her own research, enough that she'd discovered the wedding involved a special meal between bride and groom that would go unshared by the rest of the guests, with her finding out both where it had been made and had used that knowledge to poison it before it had arrived, which is a step too far. Anyone else could at least tell themselves they wouldn't go through with it, but she already has, which also means she's trying to poison the very innocent of wronging her. Jeanette. Whatever feeling she has about greed, pulling others into it is too much. And worst of all, I can't fix the dish. She doesn't even know what stupid poison she used, so I can't extract it or break it down. Ugh. Okay, one thing at a time. It doesn't seem like it needs to be eaten until the end of everything, so technically, I have a bit to figure something else out, leaving only the attempted murderer to deal with. Technically, he could trap her in a spatial item if he really wanted to in order to get her out of his hair and not have to worry about her causing any other harm, but there was a hitch in that. She'd come with her son who, while having no good feelings towards his father, hadn't arrived with any murderous intent and was enjoying the chance to try and mingle with the various siblings he knew had to have existed but had never met. If his mom went missing in the middle of his disappointing father's wedding, though, there was a good chance he'd raise some sort of fuss, meaning Ben's best option was to leave her be, right until it was a convenient enough time to trap them both and hand the woman over to the proper authorities. And considering the fact that I'm about to do so many things that are going to raise so many issues, myriad, I need you. What could you possibly need at a wedding? Long story short, I'm trying to deal with the many people aiming to kill Greed during his marriage. To avoid any, murders, I'm probably going to be committing some smaller crimes throughout the ceremony so I don't give it away. Through some small, implied threats, I've already dealt with a bunch, but I've just seen that anyone who's already put their plan into motion is going to have to be dealt with a different way, so at some point I'm also going to start kidnapping people and shoving them into my rings. The time effect on it is so great I doubt any of them will even notice by the point I take them out again. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know so you could help however you can. Explain what I'm doing to any gods who are going to want to see my actions in the worst light. Explain to the local authorities in the nearest city on my behalf that they're about to get at least a couple people coming in on my word alone, etc., etc. Feel free to do whatever other bits you think might help too, because, from the look of things, I'm going to have my hands full down here. Empty skies, having you and him in the same space for too long really does create some sort of chaos vortex. If we ever find a third as unlucky as the two of you, I don't think the universe would survive your meeting.
Hor. Very funny.
Just give me a hand while I do my best to sort this out, because as we've been speaking, I've already found another person whose plans I'm apparently on a tight time limit to stop, because it looks like one of Janet's stupid uncles managed to hire an assassin. One which Ben currently didn't have the power to find. The holder of a space magic. Apparently there was an opportune moment he was waiting for to show up and make Greed disappear, coming all too close as Ben rushed to where the crab should be, hidden behind one of the many walls, away from anyone's view, and finding him there alone with Jeeves. "Ha!" Greed said when he showed up. "Legs, what's going on? You're not supposed to be back here." "Yeah? Well, consider this to be a minor and ignorable disturbance while I count down because we're looking at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As soon as he hit one, he materialized a bat in his hand and swung, aiming where he felt just enough from his mana sense to guess that was where the teleporter was going to arrive, and caught the man in the stomach and completely off guard, having him hunched over and too shocked and in pain to react to put a new spell together to escape, letting Ben reach out and force him into his ring while the other two watched on. "All right, never mind then," Greed said. "As far as I'm concerned, you have the authority to go wherever you want. Just out of curiosity, is that guy dead?" "He'll live. I've already made arrangements for capturing people to have them sent off to jail later," Ben told him, turning the bat into dust and rubbing it off his hands. "Just ignore it. As much as I'd like to tell you that was going to be the only thing I've dealt with, my hands are actually insanely full right now, so I need to go and find anyone else I might have missed." "Oh hell, Legs, don't tell me that. You're gonna make me panic. I can offer to impart a small calming effect on you before I leave, but I really need to get back to it." "All right, make it a big one, 'cause I'm going to need it." Coming up, using deep calming on the groom, Ben ran off once more, trying not to let himself look as hurried as he was as he raced around, entering the different minds he saw to scare them off of their plots or to look for any more urgent plans and not needing to go far, finding another with only a few more steps. So it looks like one of his sons has poisoned part of the ceremony. Wait, he managed to sneak a pressure trap into this place during setup? I'm actually kind of impressed. Ben still hadn't gotten enough from any one mind about the ceremony itself. He hadn't been treating it as relevant compared to the many murders he was trying to thwart, but he could see when it was stepped on it would release a small cloud of poisonous gas to kill the groom, a method that was at the very least unlikely to take any other bystanders out, even if it would still need to be dealt with. Still, it would be easy. Nothing compared to what he'd found next, with one more assassin hiding in the woods. Ugh, Greed. Why couldn't someone have neutered you years ago? Ben wasn't able to see anything on how that particular assassination was going to be carried out. Two of Greed's daughters had hired the man without asking for details, which meant it was entirely possible the guy had simply taken the money and run, but Ben wasn't willing to buy that so readily. All he'd gotten was that the guy was going to be hiding in the woods, waiting for the perfect time to strike, leaving no clue as to what the form of it would take. No, they saw him, so it's not no clue, Ben told himself as he examined their memories. Found him in a seedy adventurer bar, no staff on hand, so he might not have been a mage, although he could have just left it while he was drinking. It's not like he brought a different weapon either. Fit looking though, that's another point, that if he's less likely to be a mage, at least not a pure one. If he's working out, then he's not focusing on spells. One arm a bit bigger than the other, particularly in the shoulder region. Okay, that points to an archer. There's a decent distance from the woods, though. Holding an augmentation then, maybe? If it is, then it would have to be air, meaning he's extra specialized for long-range attacks. Damn it, it's not nothing to go off of, but that puts me up to 3 I can't immediately solve with a few more people to go. And the ceremony hasn't even started yet. Ugh! Already able to see more faces that he hadn't yet managed to squeeze into his range. It was already feeling like a very long day. Working his way through the crowd, he managed to find 8 more he'd missed before, who thankfully were simple to deal with. Without bringing their plans into motion, they were all easy to talk out of trying anything the second he was in their head, letting him focus on the last few groups filtering in and let him watch as others around did the last bit of setup, placing a few seats for those who would need them, even if it looked like most of the crowd would be standing, as well as placing prepared plates of food all along one of the tables behind where the ceremony was to take place, letting Ben see the poisoned meal at the heart of it. Okay, and I really do need to figure out how I'm dealing with that. If I get into another dark elf's head and see how it should taste, then I could go sneak a bite of the current one and compare flavors to see if I can tell the poison from the taste difference alone, and if not, well, fuck me, 'cause then it looks like I'm just trying to remake the stupid thing with the ingredients I have on hand. Which was thankfully plenty. 20 spatial rings on his finger, each of them holding a volume of a good-sized house, meant that he had plenty to keep within. Not one was close to full, and he always made sure he had something for any given occasion, be it raw ingredients or finished meals kept hot under the effect of the time enchantment on them. He would just have to rearrange them in a way that would match both the look and flavor profile. which also means cooking a whole goddamn meal without being noticed, so we're gonna save that for the backup plan. It's fine, I can still make this work. With the beginning of the ceremony coming closer, new arrivals dropping to a trickle, it gave Ben just a moment to relax until he spotted someone he hadn't thought for a second he'd encounter. Greed's son Cheel, a convert to Myriad and the very crab who'd once kidnapped him and tried to eat Greed. That was in the past, though. As surprising as it was, Ben had no intention of holding a grudge. It was the woman beside him who was a far bigger concern. While Cheel himself seemed large to him, being nearly up to Ben's knees when standing, with a body half a meter wide, the woman was a giant in comparison, reaching Ben's shoulders in height with claws big enough to clip him in half. Cheel's mother, not sharing her son's ruby shell, but then, she never would have. Despite holding the same crab body plan as Greed, the two were different species evolved on different worlds, with her own shell a brilliant bioluminescent blue, even if none of that was nearly as important as the dangers in her mind. While some had come with weapons and plans to see Greed die, she came with determination, with collateral damage not a thought in her head. Similar to another, she'd seen fit to poison his wedding meal, but unlike that other, she hadn't known which one it was. It seemed she hadn't been aware that there was a separate, special meal for the bride and groom at all, meaning that instead she'd poisoned every other one, using a chemical cocktail of toxins acquired by a subordinate, once more not knowing exactly what had gone in it. Which means that, even if I can neutralize or extract whatever's poisoned Greed's dish, I'm not getting out of having to remake the rest. Just great. When he was done there, he was going to have to go to where the Dark Elves were gathered to see if the food for the guests held any special significance that he'd either need to do his best to replicate or if he could afford to be a bit more flexible with it, but unfortunately, he couldn't end things so easily with her there. The poison was her backup plan, with enough others in her head to leave her a clear threat. Either crushing Greed in her claws or else under her weight. She intended to see him die, and those weren't even the main choices she held. Just looking in her head, he could see that her kind produced a natural, powerful acid they could spit. A biological tool for hunting and digestion that he couldn't preemptively neutralize when it was a part of her biology and left Ben hanging his head. Honestly, how dare anyone compare my luck with Greed's? He's gone around, spending years developing bad relationships with the scariest women on the planet. Yet he's still alive. The guy's a walking miracle for not having been taken out sooner. Although that one in particular took the cake, activating Ben's authorities just by being near her in the same way the puzzle had. Something he'd only felt in significantly smaller extents when it came to many of the others there, practically ignorable in comparison. Still, he had to try and talk her out of those other bits at least, so he did the same he'd done to the rest, connected to her and ramped up her thought speed, giving his warning in her head. I see what you're planning on doing and I'm telling you to stop. Ben thought in her mind. On my authority as the Apostle of Myriad, listen to what I have to say. Forget about Greed and leave. This doesn't have to be a bigger issue. Oh my, he heard her think back. How exciting. I've never gotten the chance to murder an apostle before. He could tell she knew him to be the one who'd helped her son grow a proper shell, just as much as he could tell she didn't care. Not one thought of hers was a lie and all of it was violent. She would murder him in a heartbeat if he got in her way, and seeing the depths of her evil and that there was no changing her mind, he rapidly switched gears, erasing her memory of the brief exchange as he walked up to the two with a smile on his face, greeting them like old friends. Cheel, it's been a while, welcome, he called out. And you must be his lovely mother. It's a pleasure. I'm your son's apostle. Oh, hello there, she greeted back, just as friendly in tone now that the prior exchange was erased from her mind, even if it didn't strip her of the darkness within. Thank you so much for what you've done for my boy. He always had such a complex because of that awful bastard not filling his fatherly role. It's only a shame that Greed didn't have to die to solve it. Right? Well, I know he's a controversial figure, so I won't hold that against you, but would you mind if I borrowed your boy for a bit? There's not many of my faith here. I'd love the chance to catch up and exchange a few words. Oh, be my guest. I'll just be off admiring the main course, so find me when you're done. Ben waved her off, a picture of a friendly apostle that Cheel politely bowed to. Apostle, he greeted. I didn't get the chance to thank you for your help with leveling the last time. Despite the unique experience of it, me and my men appreciate the levels we've gained. Happy you got something out of it, and I hope you show up the next time we do something like that again. Chill. Ben told him, trying to open with a bit of small talk. Even as he kept a subtle eye on the other's mother using the eyes of the crowd he was in range to connect to, seeing her look far too excited about a meal she'd already poisoned. But I've got to be honest, the last time I saw you and Greed together, I never expected to see you two in the same area again. What changed? I never expected it either, he acknowledged. But as for what changed, honestly, he did something I'd never expected of him. He reached out. When I got the letter, I was initially going to just throw it away, but I didn't, and I read it and, well, I suppose I found it properly earnest. He apologized without casting blame and said if I was open to it, he'd like the chance to meet. The first time, I'll admit I'd expected a trap. But that didn't happen and kept not happening in the time since, and well, now I'm here. Oh wow, so are you and your dad? I don't know better. I can't decide, the crab told him, staring off towards the waiting wedding setup. Rather rich for a man who never wanted to be a part of my life to come into it now when I don't need him, but I'll admit, a part of me appreciates the effort. If you're worried at all about bad blood, then you needn't be. I won't be watching him die today. And that is genuinely so nice to hear compared to just how many other attempted murders I've already had to stop. Ben sighed, knowing his fellow believer was speaking the truth, even if his own statement got a small reaction. But you didn't exactly come with someone holding the same innocent intentions. Mother, he sighed. What's she planning? Well, from the looks of it, she's already had all of the meals except the one that Greed would actually be eating, laced with such a complex mix of poisons that I'm afraid it would even make it past my biological resistance to them, and other than that, she's planning on killing him in any way she can. Out of curiosity, can you also spit acid? I can't. I'm comfortable saying I've gotten the worst traits of both parents. Depressing but okay. Slightly related topic. Could you pretty please ask her to not murder your father during his wedding day or any day after it either, for that matter? Are you kidding?
No.
Why? You just said I don't need to worry about bad blood. You can't still want to see him die, right? No, while I can't say for sure that I'd feel bad about it, I think I'd rather him live. Okay. Then, if you looked into her mind, then you should know. That psychotic woman scares the hell out of me. All right, fair. In that case, out of consideration to you, given that she's your mother and that you're by all accounts a good and proper believer of Myriad, would you take it personally if I captured her and threw her into prison? If you can then be my guest, Chill chuckled. She's the only thing stopping me from getting complete control of our organization and taming some of its, shall we say, more distasteful affairs. I wouldn't want to see her die either, but I'm comfortable saying that we'd all feel a lot safer with her behind bars. Oh, thank God. He hadn't captured the last few to keep from disturbing the wedding, lest anyone they came with notice them going missing, but given that she'd only come with her son and that he was all for it, that made things infinitely easier as he took a few steps to the side, bringing her just within his range and shut down her mind before walking her body over to trap in one of his rings, made harmless until he'd get the chance to let her out and sent to the proper authorities, all while Chill wordlessly watched. You know, you really are a very scary man. There's something more than a little strange about hearing that from the new head of a crime family. Congrats on your coming promotion. By the way, I owe it all to my faith, he said with a wicked expression. The fact that his mother would soon be out of the way, allowing him to plan the changes he'd thought he'd need her to pass away to start enacting. All while making Ben's job just a bit easier too. At the very least, the most psychotic threat was now out of the way, leaving only to clean up after her. For a few minutes longer, Ben and Chill spoke. It seemed like no more guests were showing up from there, giving him a bit of leeway to think and plan his next moves that were only interrupted with the arrival of two more, Thera and Saf joining them. Ah, it's you, Chill said, not to his half-sister but to Thera by her side. I never did thank you enough for your help in all faith. Should you ever require a favor that may be, let's say, less than ethical, get the apostle to contact me. I'll be sure to pay you back. It was something he'd meant to say the last time they were in the same room together. But at that time, He'd both been given a quest from his god while he'd also been in the presence of two soul mages. Through it all, he'd never found the chance to properly convey the level of thanks deserved for how she'd helped change his life. "Oh, thanks," Thera said, caught off guard and needing a moment to realize that she was before the one who'd once kidnapped Ben and Greed, before they'd been tossed into the dead god's trial and allowed Ben to take over. "Ahem, Chiel, I don't think you were ever formally introduced, but that's my partner, Thera, as well as your half-sister by her side, Saf." "Saf, this would be Chiel, your half-brother." "I can see that," the girl said. Anyone with a hint of Ruby, they're practically certain to be a half-sibling she'd never met, leaving her plenty of options to choose from, even if she tried to be polite. "Nice to meet you." "Likewise, I would say it's a pleasure," Chiel told her, offering his claw to shake, which she hesitantly took. "The few times I've met up with him, Father has spoken highly of you. It sounds like he owes you his attempt to be a better man." "Ah, no," she tried to stop him, not having been prepared for the praise. "That's Jeanette. She's honestly too good for him." "I suspect most people are," Chiel chuckled, leaving Ben and Thera to listen in on the bit of bad-mouthing that was sure to be taking place across the field, with nothing like a common enemy to unite people. "Still, I hope his first attempt at proper parenting isn't treating you too poorly. He could be doing worse, I suppose. Not the best evaluation, but anything better might have been too much to hope for, with Thera breaking in to spare Greed, even without him there to hear it. "I guess Jeanette is all finished up, so things should be starting in just a few minutes, in case you all wanted to find a place to watch." "Ah, then I suppose I'd best find my spot," Chiel told them, one of the shortest ones there. "I'm sure this will make for an entertaining viewing experience at the very least." "All right, good catching up with you, Chiel," Ben told him. "Good luck with taking over the family business." Goodbyes said, he felt two sets of eyes on him after the crab left. Thera speaking first. "You really are willing to get way too chummy with people who've tried to kill you." "Actually, he only tried to kill Greed. I was just mistakenly brought along for the ride. Now, if there's nothing else from you guys, did you really save my father's life?" Saf cut him off, asking the question that had been on her mind. "Like he sings about in his song? Me and him saved each other's lives. It's not a big deal." "It is to him. He speaks very fondly of you. Well, we spent months surviving hell together. It built up a bond. I think well of him too. I know he was a worse man in the past, but I hope that the fact that he's trying to improve is worth something." He wasn't sure if her feelings were directed at the amount of time he and Greed had spent together or the bond they shared, but if that was what was making the girl awkward with him, then he could understand it. Having a closer relationship with someone close to her own age than he did his own daughter was sure to leave certain complicated feelings behind, but there wasn't much helping that. He could only hope that their relationship might improve as time went on, even if what she said next lowered his expectations of how much more they still had to go. "He's an idiot," she told him definitively. "Well, but Jeanette probably should have clarified a couple of things for him too. She grew up in the culture, so it doesn't seem as strange to her." I am sorry. You've saved his life before, right? He makes you sound clever. Maybe you'll be able to do something once the ceremony starts," seeing as he was too dumb to properly look into it. "What?" With what she was saying just worrying enough to bother him, he looked directly in her mind for answers, feeling sick with what he'd found. Like all but the original elves, dark elves as a race had a complicated history, having been taken from their homeworld by its evil god and sold to one of the other habitable planets in their system, letting the gods of those worlds have a species they could make smaller modifications to in order to create worshippers, with the gods they'd been given to each having their own quirks. What he and Greed both had been unprepared for was exactly what that meant for the coming groom. "Ugh! Damn, why? Greed, you horrible bastard. You asked me to save your life and you couldn't even bother getting your fiancé to warn you about any danger there might be involved in this?" He wanted to curse more, but he didn't have the chance. In front of everyone else, the master of ceremonies stood to make an announcement while other dark elves moved some of the set-up walls and tarps, revealing the gauntlet underneath as he announced himself to the crowd. "One and all, stop and bear witness as the musician, Greed, faces the challenge of Anquil, proving before all in attendance today both his will and his love. At one end, Jeannette, dressed up and looking like a prize with decorative feathers and frills lining her wedding outfit, a beautiful headpiece of giant, ornate quills resting on her hair, while at the other end stood Greed, still under enough of the effect of deep calming to keep the crab from outright panicking as he faced everything that stood between them. Most of the crab's vision was blocked off by a wall placed in front of him, but he could still see enough around it. Pits of spikes and some with oil, nearby dark elves going to light them, other walls to be overcome and other traps along the way too. Ben, like everyone else there, got to see the wedding trial of the war god Anquil, needing to be both challenged and survived if his friend was going to get his happily ever after. For a fraction of a second, Ben allowed himself to wallow in his shock and misery, specifically making sure not to scream despite how he was feeling on the inside. He had already put a stop to over 60 assassination attempts, and he still had 4 more disasters to deal with. The bride and groom's food being poisoned, everyone else's food being poisoned a different way, a wholly different death trap added to the entire death trap that was the wedding's challenge, and an assassin potentially out in the woods, presumably just waiting for a chance to strike. And yet, despite having all of that already to deal with, now even the wedding itself was a threat. A small, ignorable part of himself pointed out that he'd only been asked to keep Greed from being murdered by anyone who'd ruin the wedding. If it was the wedding itself that killed him, it wouldn't actually be a murder, but that was just him trying to escape the reality of the situation. He couldn't let Greed die because of some insane god's tradition, but it was clear his friend wasn't remotely prepared. He was going to need to step in during that too without giving away that he was doing so. And then I'm going to spend the night swearing at Myriad over the other gods allowing a stupid ceremony like this to freaking exist because, oh my god, I hate this stupid planet. Okay, no, I can do this. One thing at a time. While the master of ceremonies began giving a speech, he grabbed Thera's arm and pulled her with him as he got closer, forcing himself into the minds and memories of all of the nearest dark elves once he joined the crowd to search for the answer that he needed, even if he hit another snag along the way. At the very least, there was no cultural significance to the food for the rest of the guests, meaning he could entirely scrap those meals when it came to everything Chiel's mother had poisoned, and he was able to find a few people who'd gone through the ceremony themselves too, able to see in general what the couple's wedding dish was meant to taste like, even if there was some variation in their memories of the flavor profile. That was fine though, it was always going to vary based on the chef's cooking skill and the freshness of ingredients. He could work with that. What was harder to work with was the rest of the wedding's trial, finding that the exact nature of the challenge could change significantly based on whoever it was that arranged it. There was no template for him to go off of, and as things were, from where he and the target he'd need were standing, there was no way to get that information from the master of ceremonies' mind. But that was arguably manageable too. The man was standing farther back to address the crowd, but it seemed that he would move as the wedding progressed. Ben could improvise to help before then, with only one last issue getting in the way. Dark elves were mana-sensitive. Not to the point that their mana sense would be able to pick out specific affinities of the power without holding said affinity themselves. It was, however, to the point that anyone would be able to tell if he tried to interfere in what seemed like was intended to be a purely physical test, meaning that even Ben's materializing was out. If there was anything he could do to help, it would have to be through actualizing. A fact Greed didn't know Ben would be able to help with at all. As soon as Ben had the crab at least within his range, he could feel the edge of panic in his mind, suppressed thanks only to the bit of Ben's applied skill, but still made the other jump when he thought into his head. Here to save your life, as promised, Ben thought at the crab, and to swear at you for not looking into what a dark elf wedding involves. Oh Lord, legs, I've never been so happy to have you in my head. Greed thought in relief. I'll take anything, so what's the plan? No magic for this thing, so you think you could, I don't know, invent me a way into surviving this real quick? I'll pray to you and everything if that's what I've got to do. For now, just follow whatever the guy tells you. I'll make sure you survive it, Ben told him. I'm not going to be able to be in your head like this the entire time. I have to go deal with a couple things to make sure that, well, everyone here doesn't die when the wedding is over. I'm hoping I'll be able to get back not too long after his speech ends, and you have to throw yourself into this, but even if I'm late, I'll still be able to act from afar, so just don't panic, we'll make this work. I'm already failing on that whole not panicking front. Any chance I could get another hit of whatever you did to help me relax before? I need it. Applying more deep calming, Ben pulled Thera to the back of the crowd with him when he finished, not having the time to dawdle, and used Connect to watch the ceremony itself through the eyes of others while she spoke up. So why exactly are you dragging me around like this? Long story short, a good sixth of the people here came with the intent of murdering Greed, and I've been trying to make sure that didn't happen since we arrived. I was able to put a stop to all but 3 plans which I was going to try and discreetly sort out before finding out I also need to worry about the wedding ceremony killing Greed, and long story short, have you ever used an invisibility spell? Once or twice while training under Vasta. Why? Because I'm going to need you to do it a lot on me for the next 10 minutes or so. He heard the Master of Ceremonies continue on, the speech he was giving lining up with what he'd seen in enough other Dark Elf heads that he knew he had a bit of time to get things done and got Thera to spend her magic, a non-affinitied application of what was more typically a light spell that bent light around him to hide him from any watching eyes. Even if Dark Elves were sensitive to it, there was nothing to bother them when it was coming from their backs, allowing Ben to run back to where the meal was waiting and found a thick, ceremonial stew of sorts before pulling a spoon from one of his rings to have a taste and needing to keep from cursing then and there. While the favor was marginally different from anything he'd seen in any other attendant's memories, it wasn't to the point that anything stood out as potentially off, and it seemed like what bit of biological poison resistance he held was paying off. He couldn't even get a symptom of it, meaning he wasn't going to be able to use his extraction to remove the poison or materialize anything to neutralize it. That was a new dish he was going to need to replicate from scratch, forced to make something comparable with all of the wrong ingredients on hand. Oh damn, this is never going to end. He had plenty of more swearing he wanted to do too, but he couldn't let those feelings get in the way of his work and, while hidden away thanks to Thera's power, began correcting it. While a part of him considered letting the couple's poison dish be, and just forcing Greed to use his blessing magic to keep them alive, he knew he couldn't do that. Instead, a lump of mithril was pulled from his ring, hastily shaped into a small pot with a fire enchantment on it, while more and more ingredients were removed from his stores, vegetable and meats and spice that were all cut to size under his power, while more flavor compounds were materialized before being topped with water and left to simmer, ideally creating something that would be close enough in look and flavor to let the change go unnoticed, all while he directed his mana through it to speed up the cooking process before focusing on how to replace every other dish. He wasn't even going to try tasting those ones. There had to be enough types of poison in each one to give him pause before testing it on himself, but replacing them would at least be marginally easier as he dumped those hundreds of ruined dishes in his rings before pulling out plate after plate of his pre-made ones, dividing them up when he needed to and allowing him to line the table, needing to only create a few dozen more to fill out what was still missing, leading to the creation of more pots, pans, and ingredients to fill them. He saw the occasional person turn around, sensing some bit of the magic taking place, but thankfully not enough to tell where it was coming from. A curiosity more than a suspicion that led to nothing. Thera's spell was holding. There was nothing for any of them to see as he waited for each meal to come together before plating, wanting every one of them to look fancy enough to be worthy of the occasion, but unfortunately for him, taking too long, signified by the Master of Ceremonies calling out once his speech ended, a couple minutes earlier than Ben had hoped. And with that, it is time for Greed to prove himself. Before him, the challenge of Anquil, beyond it, his bride, leaving only to see if he has the strength to make it. Ugh. Goddamn it all, they just had to hire a fast talker. With Greed having no choice but to begin, Ben was forced to see just how much he could manage to help from that distance. Using the eyes of those within his range and listening to the calls of the one directing his friend on where to go, Ben began actualizing amidst everything else for what help he could give, wrapping a layer around Greed that perfectly matched his appearance so none could detect the protective shell. The calming Ben had placed on him, preventing Greed from reacting too much from its sudden appearance, leaving the crab with far greater things to worry about. With challenges to be faced, your first one is simple, the announcer called out, directing Greed, as was his role. Surpass the wall before you to get to the real struggle beyond. At just short of Ben's height, for a dark elf, the challenge would have been nothing, but for a crab that could be carried in one hand, It was basically the same as saying that Greed should already give up on his marriage. The task looking basically insurmountable when Greed was being told to get over a smooth, flat surface like that, which at the same time gave Ben the opportunity to stall while he finished the dishes. If Greed couldn't do it, then the wedding would be called to an end, but there was no rule against finishing it slowly, allowing him to begin moving Greed's body up to it, standing to face it for just a moment before rearing his friend up on his back legs, using his front ones and pushing them into the stone wall in front of him. With how small he was, not many in the crowd were able to realize what Greed seemed to be doing at first until he pulled those legs out and put the ones behind them into those newly created divots, forcing his front legs in again to slowly crawl up its surface. Once no part of him was touching the ground, those who hadn't come to explicitly watch him fail or die went wild at the display of strength that seemed like such a thing should have involved, not knowing that it was being done purely through the projection of Ben's mind. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that it looked believable. Greed held 2 awakened skills and, like so many other people on the planet, had had his soul modified to make him even stronger. Add in just how tough his shell was, and being able to pull off something like that was plenty believable, while making it look like it was still a struggle on top of that gave Ben the time he needed. Manipulating the dishes he was attempting to create with his power, after only another minute they were done and plated. Leaving the tables covered with new food for all of the guests to eat at the same time, he poured out the stew meant for Greed and Jennet, cleaning the dish quickly to make sure no residue was left behind, when he didn't know the potency of the poison it held before replacing it with what he'd managed to whip up. None of them had gotten his best work. But that didn't matter. He was a contender for his crafting, a man just short of godhood for that skill. Not his best work would still be miles above what any typical cook could pull off, even above most exceptional ones too. He'd successfully saved that part of the wedding, leaving only 3 more parts that needed to be dealt with. The assassin in the woods, the poison pressure plate hidden in the wedding challenge, and the wedding as a whole, made dangerous enough that the pressure plate in the mix was going to fit in uncomfortably well. But with that first part complete, he could rush his way to the front, grabbing Thera again when he passed her and whispering that she could dispel the magic she had on him while he subtly went into the minds of everyone in his range, getting the crowd to shuffle just enough that he could make it back to the front without any of them realizing they'd been controlled, just in time for him to get Greed back in his range as he got the crab to the top, letting them both survey what there was still to come. Yep, Ben heard Greed think, "I'm going to die." "You're not going to die." Ben thought back, making the other aware of his return. "You're just going to do what I tell you and we'll make it through this, understand? Oh, thank the gods you're back. I missed that sweet voice. And it looks like I'm going to up the calming effect on you a bit. Now, let's just see what this guy says we have to do next." It was arguably pretty straightforward, and at the very least it seemed the challenge had been scaled down somewhat to match Greed's size. If a dark elf had to go through that same one, then it would have been easy, but when it came to Greed, it was plainly meant to be difficult. Maybe too difficult, Ben thought to himself, keeping that bit private. If this were to be scaled up to suit a dark elf, then it would actually be a lot more than what any of the memories I've seen went through. Did they have trouble adjusting it to his size? Or was it made to be a bigger challenge than usual since he has 2 awakened skills? Even if neither one is relevant to getting through that, he'll have the growth bonuses for it, so maybe it's harder to account for those. He didn't know, and the Master of Ceremonies was still too far outside of Ben's range to give him any answers, leaving him to only focus on what would come next. A stretch of burning oil beneath the wall, a spike trap that was thankfully poorly thought out, given that it wouldn't be able to pierce Greed's shell. The poison pressure plate beyond that seemed like it was originally meant to be a stretch leading up to a far deeper pool of boiling oil farther in before another wall that would need to be overcome, with more challenges beyond. They just had to take things one at a time, conquering each one to get to the next. And from where we currently are, I should be able to have Greed jump over the oil to land on the edge of the spike pit, have him move through that without any real harm, hold his breath when he gets to the poison his son put in place, and having conquered the starting wall, it's time to go on. Lower yourself into the flames and walk through. Show us the heat is no enemy to you. Oh, come on. It was something he knew he could help Greed deal with, but he also needed to make it look good, with the fact that the oil was sure to cling to the actualized layer, meaning it would appear Greed would seem to be burning for a bit after, but that was nothing in the end. With the next instruction given, Ben saw no point in making the way greed was lowered a slow thing, and instead he let his friend fall off the edge, landing within the flames with the oil just deep enough to create a small splash before taking the first quick yet controlled steps. Ben having every part of greed covered to protect him, even as the crab felt the tiniest edge of worry within. I gotta say, legs, whatever you're doing to my head to make this only kind of worrying instead of horrifying is great. Absolutely love it, so keep it up. That's the plan. Just be prepared for when it wears off when this is done and you're left remembering all of this. Nope, don't like thinking about that. I am safe, right? Yeah, nothing's going to hurt you while I'm here to help. So just let me cover this. A few long moments were all it took to get out of the flames. Oil still burning on Greed's body in a way that caught everyone's attention, with even the one leading the ceremony seeming momentarily at a loss, taking a second before saying whatever he would next. That gave Ben a chance to shift down the crowd, wanting to keep Greed in range and get closer to the announcer to eventually see what other ridiculous things he was going to force his friend to do. With the fire past, the spikes are next. Bring yourself from point to point without falling until you make it to the other side. Ugh. Come on, that's just stupid. Ben had no doubt that particular order came from the realization that that specific trap was more likely than not going to be harmless, but even then, that in particular wasn't going to be hard while he was at the wheel. The instruction given, Ben threw Greed's body at it, catching the point with one claw before carrying on to the next, again and again and again until it was done, getting a roar of excitement from the crowd, with even a few that had originally wanted the worst joining in, impressed enough by what they saw to treat it like entertainment, which Ben supposed was exactly what it was. A spectacle for the audience as much as a challenge for the participant, with one unexpected part added to the landing beyond. Ben made sure Greed was entirely sealed away the same time he finished that section, his landing activating the pressure plate and spraying up a fine mist of a different poison, to both be breathed in and to land on Greed's body, with neither part of it being successful. Ben had him protected from the effects it held, and other than a few confused looks from a couple that had been close enough to see a bit of the spray, nothing else came from it. One more assassination attempt had been successfully averted, leaving only one more to reveal themselves. One that still hadn't happened, making Ben hopeful that, just maybe, the hired hitman really had just taken the money and run. A small mercy Ben wasn't ready to let himself believe he would get while the next section loomed. A pool of boiling oil needing to be crossed. So we've obviously been given this stretch to create a running start for jumping over it. The question is just how convincing to make it look. Do I have Greed clear it easily, or do I get him right on the edge, maybe making it look like he might fall in for a second to raise some suspense? Or, the spikes past. The groom must now dive to the depths of the oil, retrieving what sits beneath. Okay. There's literally no way that dark elves are being asked to dive into a pool of boiling oil when they get married, so what's going on here? Was it designed specifically to be a trial for Greed's race? Can ruby crabs survive that sort of thing? He asked Greed as much, and the answer was immediate. No, we can't. So maybe your race was mistaken for one that could? Okay, that would be a pretty shit mistake to make, but fine, don't stress, because if I could protect you from the fire before, I can protect you from this. Legs. I don't say this often enough, but I love you. Yeah, save it for your wife when we get you through this, because there's still plenty more to go. Having Greed step into the pool and sink to the bottom, Ben only had the crab's eyes to work off of as the sun's rays struggled to get through that thick liquid, even if it was enough. He could see a shape in the end, frankly far too big to expect Greed to be able to comfortably swim back up with, being a metal weight the crab's size that Ben actualized a platform underneath, raising it to the surface again with Greed before making it appear the crab dragged it out of the oil. Once more getting a cheer, with one face in particular taking a subtle frown instead, leaving something to click for Ben. Oh God, no. You're kidding me. Legs? Don't mind me, Greed. Just something I'm going to be able to confirm in a minute. If I'm right, then I'll be able to make this a lot easier for you. Really? Because that doesn't seem like an oh God no sort of reaction. I was thinking about something else and it slipped through. Ben lied. It's fine, so let's just see what you're going to be expected to do next. It was another wall, same as the first, but by that point, Ben wasn't expecting a simple repeat. Every hope he had for how to finish that was dashed, and even if he was able to help his friend get through it all, that didn't change the fact that the challenge seemed designed to be a pain in the ass, proven once again with the next order. With climbing already complete, prove your strength once more by tunneling through to the next section waiting for you beyond. Okay, between this and the last, this is 100% designed to tire Greed out, Ben thought, sparing Greed any form of exhaustion by using his actualization to smash big chunks out of the wall, making it look like Greed was punching his way through. Leave him exhausted enough and he'll do worse and worse in the next sections after too, which is suspicious enough as it is, but from here it looks like I'll at least be able to get any answers. With Greed progressing through the course and Ben following along through the crowd, they were finally close enough that Ben could look directly in the Master of Ceremonies' mind, allowing him to see if the only person he hadn't been able to check also had designs on his friend's life. As with every mind Ben entered, when he looked in the thoughts of the one leading Greed and Janet's wedding, what he found was a life laid before him. A childhood growing up in the area where he now worked as a priest of his god and doing childish things. Growing, maturing, making friends, and even falling in love. A childish crush that never got to blossom into anything more. The girl having left before he had the chance and left him carrying a torch for all of those years until, almost as if from thin air, she reappeared in the worst possible way, needing him to carry out her wedding. And Ben couldn't care less. The man wasn't even openly admitting it to himself with the privacy of his mind, but he had arranged the challenge to kill Greed, telling himself that he was just making a challenge worthy of anyone Jeanette might love, but there was no denying that the crab's death was the end goal, making the solution from there simple. Ben took away his ability to decide what would happen next. Taking control of the body and shutting down the mind it held, Ben began acting as the man, giving instructions that weren't too over the top so as to draw suspicion, something that a few who'd seen the oil dive were already feeling, and kept it from escalating further. He became both the Master of Ceremonies as well as the one piloting Greed's movements, making the challenge of it all both faster and more straightforward. When there was the chance, he phrased things so that Greed could simply jump over challenges and take the most direct route of traps, rushing through the gauntlet now in a way that looked far more fluid without someone actively trying to figure out how to make the worst of it, and it left the rest of the crowd eating it up, the ones who either liked or didn't actively know Greed cheering him on as he went, with the end coming closer and closer to sight, all while Jeanette waited for her partner. It was also clear that he might have been rushing things a bit too fast, but by that point Ben didn't care. It looked good enough for everyone else, and the day had worn him out. The very last thing he wanted was to draw it out, especially when it still wasn't done. Standing on the final wall, a few more challenges before him, Greed could see Janet's face, smiling brightly at him and filled with joy that he'd gotten so far. Ben let the crab raise an arm to wave in the exact moment he spotted something else. Through the eyes of everyone within his range, Ben observed the world around him. Most focused on the wedding ceremony itself, but a couple were getting antsy, needing to stretch their necks and look around, with those few showing him that neither he nor Greed had gotten lucky. The last hired assassin had taken their shot. Through the power of his thought speed, Ben watched as, from his perspective, the arrow hung still in the air, marking his guess correct as to the assassin's profession and perfectly aimed at Greed in a way he was sure would hit, leaving him measuring his options for how to deal with him. A part of him toyed with the idea of taking control of Greed's body to force his friend to catch it before it could strike. That was sure to add some wow factor, but it would conflict with the crab's request to keep everything that needed solving low-key. Using his magic was possible too. He was fairly sure he could keep all of the dark elves in his range from noticing the bit of mana it would cost to deal with, especially when he was already in their heads, but while that would have been the simplest option, it also left the risk of someone sensing something and suspecting that Greed hadn't faced his challenge honestly. No, the best solution was the one he'd been using till that point, and, using the eyes of some of the other guests to guide him, he actualized both a small plate in front of the arrow to stop it while at the same time made dozens of small metal balls with that same power, shooting them off into the woods. He had the arrow's trajectory, which meant he knew roughly where Greed had been shot from, and since no matter how good someone's vision had to be, it was worthless if there were any trees in the way, he knew his target couldn't be that deep. He aimed a little lower than where the bow had to have been being held, certain to have his aim at the man's gut, before he released those mental bullets and spoke up to the heavens after the arrow was stopped and left to harmlessly clatter to the ground, too far away for anyone to notice. "Hey, Myriad, you around? What is it this time? I think I managed to get the last assassin, I should have just shot him with enough force to knock him out of the tree he was hiding in, so could you let me know if it looks like there's someone dying on the ground near the edge of the woods and how long they have? Did you seriously just kill someone? I shot blindly towards a guy that just tried to murder my friend, so maybe? If I did, it was a justified accident, and if I didn't, well, I'll go collect him once the ceremony is over because we're just about done. I found him. Broke both of his arms falling out of that tree, and I'm seeing a lot of blood. So maybe he lasts another 10 minutes? I guess it's up to fate then. We'll see if I get there in time because right now I need to end things. With Greed at the final little section, having continued on while Ben had dealt with that diversion. He got the crab to jump a pit that could only have been dug with earth magic, left so deep that he couldn't see the bottom before arriving at Janet's feet, marking his completion and the end of that nonsense. Before Ankwell and before Janet, Greed has proven himself worthy of her love. The ceremony completed and their lives joined. May everyone here give them a hearty congratulations. With a cheer, the crowd watched as Janet picked up Greed and kissed him, bringing the main event to its end. What? The master of ceremonies said, not understanding what had happened. One moment, he'd been leading the event, and the next the crowd had started to disperse, grabbing plates of food and waiting for other parts of the wedding. Greed needing to present his hairpiece and say a few words beyond that, with the worst of all being the person in front of him, staring him down. Hello there, Ben said brightly. I'm Ben, also known as the Apostle of Myriad, also known as the third tier, the Eldritch Mind Holder. And also a telepath of sorts. Ben thought at him, making the other jump before going on. Now, I'm just going to make things clear since this seems like a first-time bit of attempted murder and telepath, remember? No point trying to deny it, I was already in your head. Anyway, your part of the wedding is officially over. Should you do anything else to get in the way of the bride and groom, be aware that I'll be breaking every bone in your body, and there's not one person in this world with the authority to stop me. Have I made that clear? Ahem, Crystal. He nodded, overwhelmed by the sheer announced authority of the one before him, and flinched as Ben patted his arm, a bright grin on his face. Glad we understand each other. In that case, help yourself to a meal and try to relax. It's a party after all. When the man hurried away, more than happy to have been dismissed, Thera made her way over, a doubtful look on her face. Making friends, I take it? Wrapping up loose ends. He sighed as he leaned into her, resting his head on her shoulder. If Greed ruins this marriage, I'm going to kill him. I worked way too hard on making this a success. Ha! You make it sound like you planned it. Considering that every person here currently enjoying the food hasn't been poisoned thanks to me, I'm pretty comfortable saying I deserve some credit. Speaking of, you mind giving me a hand? Why, even more killers in our midst? No, just one I already dealt with. Wanna hide us and fly us out to the forest real quick. We've got an assassin in the woods currently bleeding out, and while it's not exactly a problem for me if he dies, it will probably make things easier on Myriad if his apostle didn't just murder a man, no matter the circumstances. After a quick run to the woods, finding the man Ben had nearly ripped in half with his power and getting Thera to heal him before trapping him in his ring, the two went back to enjoy the festivities that remained, eating food and watching the happy couple. Greed presented the hairpiece, leaving his now wife overjoyed, and they both spoke a bit to the crowd, thanking everyone for coming and leaving them to mingle in the end, with all Ben wanted to do was rest. You gonna survive? Thera chuckled. There should be a band coming soon. I'd like to get at least one dance out of you. You can get as many as you want from me. I'm just enjoying the chance to decompress right here for a second. All right. In that case, I want to stretch my legs for a bit. I'll find you back here. I'll be eagerly waiting. He watched as she walked off before hanging his head back and taking a breath. It had been a far longer day than he'd been prepared for. He certainly wasn't ready for quite the level of spite and rage aimed at Greed, but at the very least, he'd been able to see to it that his friend got married to the woman he loved and, just as importantly, survived the experience. Yeah, all in all, I think that should count as a good day. Well, don't you look deep in thought? Janet chuckled behind him, trying and failing to sneak up on him. You doing okay? Oh yeah, just a little tired. Don't mind it. How about you? Was this everything you hoped for? And more? she told him, her smile sharing as much. And thank you for your work. Greed told me that he was going to commission you, but the hairpiece is really just so lovely. Well, I couldn't have made it without Greed's input. He nailed down the design, so if you like it, then it just shows the guy has some good taste. Of course he does, he married me. She laughed. But I just wanted to say thanks while I could, before I do a bit more mingling. Anytime. A wife of Greed's is a friend of mine, so if you ever need a commission, don't be a stranger. I may just have to take you up on that, she told him, about to leave but turning back once more to give him a small wink. And thanks for making sure my husband survived the day. You deserve a nice break. She left before he could respond, leaving him to quietly laugh to himself. Guess we weren't quite as sneaky about it as I'd hoped. Alone again, he let himself relax once more until another individual joined him, Jeeves carrying Greed his way before stepping back, giving them their privacy. Legs, I gotta say, I can't thank you enough. The wedding was great, and I didn't die. Basically went off without a hitch. There were a few hitches, Ben made sure to point out, and at least a few people I'm gonna have to capture and drag off to prison after this. I'm not sure if I should be going for everyone who intended on murdering you or just the ones who actually put something in motion before I could stop it. But there might be a sizable crowd disappearing before the night's through. About that. You think you could do me one last favor and let them off with a warning? Wanting to kill me, well, I don't really want to hold a grudge today of all days, and I'm still trying this whole being a better man thing. I've given enough people a reason to hate me with my old love 'em and leave 'em attitude. I can let things slide just this once. All right, if you're sure, Ben shrugged, making a mental note to invade the minds of the few who'd put their plans into motion before he could stop them to properly tell them off for the attempt, lest they get any funny ideas in the future. Except I'm not sparing the two that were specifically hired to kill you. They're being turned in, and Cheel's mother is going to be too. Not to scare you too much, but she tried to kill everyone here, and letting her go would also mess up some of your son's goals too. As a believer of Myriad, I'm not getting in his way. Lord Fair. She really was up there as one of the more psychotic women I've been with. The crab groaned. She really tried to kill everyone? Yeah, although actually, Jeannette probably would have survived. She had a lot of plans to murder you in particular, and she poisoned the wedding guests' meals so everyone who ate one would have died. But since Jeannette was just eating your guys' food, she should have gotten out unscathed, ignoring the fact that someone else poisoned that one. Ha! She really is luckier than I'll ever be, Greed told him, shaking his head before falling silent for a moment. You really think I can do this, Legs? Do what? Be a husband. My track record with women is terrible, and it's pretty clear I'm trash at being a father too. Even the one I'm trying to raise, I'll keep doing my best, but I'm still not exactly picking up any good feelings from her. I want to be that guy, you know? But I've never been him. I want this family life, but what if I can't handle it? I definitely don't deserve it. I think you're worried over nothing. You love Jeannette enough that you didn't call the wedding off the second you realized what you were being thrown into, and you're going to keep making your life together. And as for raising Saf, well, while I was running around trying to deal with just how many people wanted to kill you, she's the one who let me know just how crazy this wedding was going to be. If she didn't give me that heads up, I might have focused on other things. And as for your other kids, Cheel spoke to me a bit about getting to see you too and how he felt, and what I'm getting at is, I don't think you're doing as bad of a job as you seem to think. Really? Really? Ben nodded before going on. And besides, after all I went through to make this wedding a success, on no notice I might add, you're actually not allowed to screw it up. You've got to spend the rest of your life making your wife and kids happy. Ha! You got me there, Greed told him, lightly hitting Ben's arm with a claw before falling into a thoughtful silence once more. And Legs? There's actually one more thing. God. I guess I've got putting out one more fire in me still. No, not that. It's just, sometime, before the next wave rolls around, come and see me. All right, sure. But why? What's going on? Nothing's going on. There's no reason for it. Can I not just want to see my buddy one last time before the world goes to hell? Yeah, of course, man. I'll make the time. Good. He cleared his throat, feeling awkward about bringing the mood down. And make sure you say goodbye today too before you guys head out, you hear? I've got to do a bit more mingling, but I'm not gonna forgive a vanishing act.
Ah, no worries, Grid.
It sounds like I've got some dancing to do too, so I'll be here for a while yet. Go see the rest of your guests and I'll catch you before I head out. With the crab having more to greet and surely more than a few awkward exchanges left to make, Ben enjoyed the bit of peace once more until the sounds of music began, the band starting to play and creating the chance to dance. Hearing it, how could he leave his girlfriend to wait? Forcing himself to stand, he turned and instantly spotted her amidst the crowd, beginning to make his way over to her before stopping in his tracks. No, surely not. I'm just being paranoid. Everything is fine. It was what he was telling himself at least, but he couldn't just not check. After all, the band hadn't been there before the ceremony had started. Veering off to the group of 5, for on instrumentals and one singing, he got close enough to check their minds, leaving him to groan at one guilty one among them. A person who was against what greed had done to the music scene of the world, his famous show affecting what others would put out and perform as well. When he'd gotten the job of performing the wedding, he intended to use it to make a bloody statement, one Ben wasn't going to allow, as he pulled the man directly into his mind, speaking before the other could understand what was happening. Hello there, the Apostle of Myriad here to give you a few little words. So listen, it's been a very long day, and while I've been doing my best to make sure no one else murders greed as politely as possible, I'm honestly pretty sick of being polite at this point, so instead I'm going to tell you this. I do not care about the frankly incredibly stupid reason you've decided to try and kill my friend. Either give up and play your damn songs like you were hired to, or I swear, on my authority as the Apostle of Myriad, I'm going to materialize a handful of razor blades directly inside of your throat. Am I making myself clear? Got it? The singer gulped, fully unprepared for such an encounter, and watched as Ben nodded. Good. And on a more personal note, my girlfriend is in the crowd, so I'm expecting a good performance. Put your heart into it, and maybe I'll forget about just what you were planning here. Releasing the man, there was a single second where the singer needed to gather himself before putting his everything into the song, letting him finally join Thera's side while she swayed. You moved, she told him as she grabbed his arms, wrapping them around her, which he was more than happy to lean into. Sorry, there was one last thing for me to finish, but it's done now. May I have this dance? You may. The band's surprisingly good. I guess it shouldn't be too much of a shock that greed has some good connections in that area. Ha! It definitely makes for a nice way to end things. Enjoying the dance and finally getting a bit of peace, he was more than happy to focus on the moment, content just to have Thera in his arms. Unending extraction enhancement level increased. Deep material sense level increased. Vitality enhancement level increased. Vitality recovery rate enhancement level increased. Mana enhancement level increased. Mana recovery rate enhancement level increased. Strength enhancement level increased. Stamina enhancement level increased. Soul regeneration enhancement level increased. Alien sense level increased. Multiversal inclination level increased. 2 weeks after the wedding, Ben felt like smashing his face against a wall. I can't. This awakening connect in the same year you became a contender for it was unreasonable from the start. It only seems possible because of everything else you've pulled off in that time. I refuse to accept this is impossible. There's a big range of options that might make it work. They all just fall into the categories of unlikely to succeed, liable to kill me, and unethical even by my standards. Something has to work. Yeah. Well, work your way through the unlikely to succeed options first. I don't think I want to witness something that you of all people would dub as unethical. What's that supposed to mean? That I'm speaking to the coming god of evil who, in his heart, deeply believes the topic is relative. Yeah, because I'm right and my skill literally proves that. I can detect evil viewed on a societal scale, evil viewed on an individual scale, and evil viewed on my scale. I've got no sense for any sort of innate evil in this world, which means there is none. Evil is a frame of mind. Fine, then I don't want to see what happens when your mind is the one framing it. Ben was going to retort but lost his chance as he heard notifications coming from the heads of the people around him, telling him of the success of the people he was training. By that point, every adult demidemon had awakened their connect and every one of them had gained a bonus mind skill for it too, leaving only a few who'd come to continue training with him since then. He didn't blame any that stopped. Going from low levels of the skill to awakening through exposure to his mind was going to be rough, and the majority of them seemed like they just wanted a nice long break more than they were quitting outright, and they'd gotten what he'd wanted them to as well. Not just the levels or the new mind skills, they were getting the attribute bonuses, making all of them more equipped to deal with whatever the future was going to hold in store. And it's not like everyone quit after their success. Ben told himself as he looked around the shop at who was still showing up. While Dallaire and Mora worked off to the side with one of his clones, there were a good half-dozen others there filling the space, continuing to train their awakened connect skills with him and their new mind skills too, be they complex mind, mental expansion, parallel thought, or focus. The demis hadn't been able to awaken those yet, but of those who were still stopping by, it was only a matter of time, with one standing out there more than the rest in what they'd achieved. The only one who wasn't a demi-demon. All right, excellent work everyone. But with your levels, you officially need to take breaks for a bit, so I'd better not see any of you trying to sneak back in with the next groups before that. Okay? A small groan went up among them. Even if they were excellent at training properly, there was no denying that Ben was still putting them through hell, and it left a small chuckle breaking free of his lips before he went on. And other than that, let's get a small round of applause for your High Priestess. Valeria, you are officially Myriad's second contender, the next closest in the faith to achieving a godhood of your own. That perked the rest of the demis up, clapping happily for her while Ben watched his apprentice look over in her own curiosity while the priestess blushed under the attention. She deserved it, though. By reaching the 9th level of her advanced connection, there was no denying that she'd cemented her place and authority within the faith that was just as grand as the position she already held, and that wasn't even the only skill she'd been growing. Her unnatural mental expansion was leveling well from that same exposure to his mind, and he wanted to help her keep growing it too, even if there was a touch of selfishness tied to his desire to help out his coworker. You just want her awakening that to see if the skill at the 3rd tier will integrate into your mind like it did when it hit the 2nd. That's not just why I want it. Thank you very much. It would just be a handy bonus to getting her there. The world needs more 3rd tiers. Think of how handy it would be to get her to that level, and the bragging rights to you as well. You'd have 2 living godlings to your name. Has any god ever had 2 living 3rd tiers at once before? Well, no, but you still can't deny that you're hoping that if she awakens that then you'll level your own ridiculous mind. You've got to admit it would be handy. The word you're looking for is horrifying. Besides, who knows? If you keep helping her, maybe she'll be the first to awaken connect instead of her mind skill. If that happens, I'm literally going to cry. Over not having her mind skill to take advantage of or the idea that someone else might get a 3rd tier connect before you. Both. Undeniably both. Still, he did his best to suppress that feeling. However it would work out, he'd just have to take whatever results she'd get, and that would still be a ways off anyway. He'd need her to get a few more levels to her unnatural mental expansion before he could think about trying to help her awaken it, and he needed to let her recover after that round of training with him too, even if it brought one more idle thought going through his head. I've already got Awakener as a title, wonder if I'll get a new one if I push someone else into the 3rd tier? Great Awakener, Master Awakener, Divine Awakener, I feel like there's room for options. He let himself muse on that while he instead led the demis out, saying his goodbyes to them until only Valeria and one other were left. So, how are you both feeling? The scale of the mental expansion levels still feels weird to adjust to, the High Priestess admitted. It takes a couple of days to get used to before it starts feeling normal. A couple of days isn't too bad in the grand scheme of things, Ben tried to reassure. Before I even got to the 2nd tier, I was having a synergy issue with some of my mind skills that left me with a multi-month-long migraine. Your soul should be adapting to the change your mind is going through too, so it should get even easier the more you grow. I wouldn't worry about it. Especially don't worry about it if it's going to keep you from letting me try to awaken you. Oh, I'm not worried, she rushed to tell him. I couldn't be more thankful for the help. To be at the 9th level of an awakened skill of all things, I never dreamed of as much in my life. Ha! Well, I'm glad to hear it. In that case, make sure you keep scheduling some time to practice with me. I know it might feel like you're done, but there's really no reason not to keep chipping away at the skill. After all, there's still more to progress. You really should just tell her you want to keep raising her mind skills and that you think you might be able to awaken her mental expansion in particular. Myriad sighed in his head. Don't make it seem like this is to keep trying to help her improve Connect. Excuse you, I'll have you know that the Church of Myriad was built on deceit. If I'm honest, there's a chance she'll worry about what having a third-tier mind will be like and decide she doesn't want it. Much easier to focus on the part where she might be able to awaken Connect. It's not like it's a lie either. Just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean it won't for her. A lot to say to that, but my main comment is that my church wasn't built on deceit. Yeah. Remind me again how you got your apostle, would you? Doesn't matter. Kind of does to me actually, but fine. And your priestess and your oracle then? That was you. That was all literally you. Whoa now. Take some personal responsibility here. Ben thought up with a grin. Those were the actions of your apostle. As the god, you've got to either stop the things done in your name or accept the blame for them. If I were capable of controlling my apostle to any extent, I believe my life would be significantly more manageable. The cube sighed in his head. Thankfully, the rest of my faith is mostly upstanding. That reminds me, did Cheel succeed in taking over his crime family? Yes, he did. Good for him. Send him my best. Ben laughed in his head while focusing on the others still there. And Toltho, how are you feeling about things? You're officially the third highest Connect holder in the faith. Well, arguably tied for third, but Satchels became a part of her plant magic, so it doesn't really count. Anyway, you're doing okay with this training. It's certainly intense, but it's worth it. The leader of the Demis nodded. Even if it's hard, how could I not use such a valuable resource? That's the spirit. You make sure you take your break like I said, but after that, come by when you feel like it. I'll turn you into a contender too before you know it, maybe even get you one more awakening. With Toltho holding Complex Mind, their training together had progressed it to the 9th level, letting Ben see what that skill would have normally looked like if it hadn't been interacting with all of the others in his head, and he wanted the Demi-Demon to raise it for the same reason he wanted Valeria to get her mind to the 3rd tier. Whatever changes came with it would almost certainly imprint on his mind, strengthening his skill and hopefully bring him closer to getting a level to it as well. Which means I just need to find a good contender for raising parallel thought and focus to the 3rd tier too, although focus holders don't seem to grow as fast from my input as the other 3 skills do, so that might be harder to pull off. Still, whatever mind gods I can help make, the better. With a few more words shared between them though, Ben let them go, each of them having their own tasks to do, with Ben's put on hold as his own set of notifications rang out in his mind, bringing a bright grin to his face. Destruction authority level increased. Evil authority level increased. Evil god of sacrilege level increased. And it looks like when the kids are done today, I'm gonna have to go on a small trip. Flying through the air under his own power, Ben rushed himself down dirt roads and past the eyes of curious succubi along the way, micromanaging his journey as he went. Even though he'd only used his magic to let himself fly a few times, and the experience of it still felt strange, less like something he was doing than it felt like something being done to him, even if it still managed to be exhilarating in its own way, with the only drawback being just how many looks it would get him as he went. Attention he didn't usually want, it was enough to keep him from doing anything like that at home or any other town he'd passed through, but compared to the speeds his legs could take him at, when it came to longer journeys, it was clear that that was the way to go, and with the strength of his total mana pool and power of his magic, he didn't need to stop until he reached his destination, returning to the fields where the souls of the forbidden gods were being put to use, in need of a replacement. It wasn't like there wasn't more he could have gotten out of Harrow. So long as he kept building the god's mind back up again after he'd gotten all he could, he'd be able to keep extracting more experience to be used, but that didn't change the fact that it was clearly of a worse quality after enough time passed. No matter how Ben would reset them, the psychic wounds he would leave on their souls seemed to leave traces he couldn't remove, eventual resets no longer allowing those imprisoned gods to maintain their haughty attitudes when seeing him for what they would believe was the first time since he'd slain them, leaving an instinctual terror that he currently couldn't undo and worsen the experience gain he could get from breaking them. Which means if I use them for too long, there's a chance that eventually I'll no longer be able to reset them to a productive state. As it is, from what I've seen, I think that any god I use would still be able to give me experience even if I just used one until the next wave, but it's better not to risk it, and that could easily change if I level my mind again. Create a few more mind gods to imprint on my thoughts and I might get close. God, if I level Eldritch Mind before Awakening Connect, I'm gonna cry. With that cheery thought in his head, though, he arrived, wondering briefly if he was going to get a repeat of the last time he'd gone, but finding it wasn't to be. No dryad working those fields would accidentally mistake him for Bloom when Bloom was already there, having 3 different women than the ones Ben had met the last time at the Great Spirit's side, with their attention entirely focused on each other. None of them noticing him, Ben briefly considered getting close enough to get into the spirit's head to see if anyone had actually bothered having that conversation about mortal affection with him or not, but ultimately decided that, as things stood, he didn't want to know. He could see clear interest in the dryad's eyes and actions, and with the way they were touching the spirit, it at the very least seemed that they hadn't been given any sign to stop. And if I find out something's going on, then I'm gonna have to tell Thera, and she sure doesn't want to know. Interesting thought, though. I know the dryads talked Bloom into making a body from one of their trees for, well, let's not call them nefarious reasons, but considering that based on Abris, they should be able to produce offspring no matter what sort of plant he chooses to inhabit. It does make me wonder if that might result in a line of dryads that could reproduce with plants that didn't originate from their homeworld. And yeah, Thera's right, I need to stop being a researcher about this. With all of the dryads busy and Ben already having the location he needed from the last time he visited, he instead just walked into the rows of trees where groups of succubi and incubi were at work harvesting the fruits they produced to make the world's strengthening potions, selecting his next victim. A god of passion and ice, Nance stood there, filling the role forced upon him ever since his betrayal of the world had been discovered, not knowing just how better off he was for it than he was about to be soon as Ben took out the divine crystal at the tree's base and replaced it with Harrow's, taking the new one in his hand to connect to the god it held. Unlike the other two he'd seen, when Ben pulled Nance into his mindspace, the god's first reaction was to prostrate, at least to the extent its form allowed. While the shape any deity took could be strange, the one before him had a form of dense snowflakes blowing in a wind. A few loose leaves mixed in, no doubt from how being trapped in a plant was reshaping him, with the movement of them arranging themselves to somewhat match Ben's shape in an attempt to make the display look more convincing. "I'm sorry," Nance told him before Ben could so much as utter a word. "I was wrong. Everything I've done. I deserve this." A statement Ben watched the other give with interest. Not because he believed it, he was already within the other god's mind and could tell he didn't mean a word of it, hoping to instead get the jump on Ben, either to attack him or to trick him into giving the god back his freedom. No, what caught his interest so thoroughly was that, while looking over that deity's memories for anything worthwhile, even as he only just began, it became clear that the one he was standing before was an evil god. A designation that would fit any of the forbidden gods really for what they'd done, abandoning their old worlds to save themselves before arriving there to create and mistreat the demi-demons in an attempt to strengthen themselves, ultimately bringing that and every other world closer to its doom for what that had led to. Yet those were all events from after their worlds had been invaded. Of the two Ben had already looked at, he would call neither of them good gods. In fact, he found the memories of both to be rather terrible. Yet by the standards of the collective gods of that world, they wouldn't have been viewed as outright evil. Nance, though, was different. From hatching plots to divide the other 4 gods his homeworld had been born with, forcing them to war and kill one another while their mortals did the same before ultimately striking the final blow on the survivor of that fight, to freezing his planet to match his ideals with little care for how that affected the things and people living there. That deity was nothing if not selfish and conniving. Even then, Nance thought that he could try to repent, act like he deserved his punishment until an opportunity came, or else until Ben himself showed a moment of compassion, not knowing that he'd get neither. Which just leaves the question of how to deal with him, he thought to himself. Obviously, eventually I'm gonna have to start breaking him down, but what I'm seeing, yeah, he makes me sick. Let's have some fun with him first. "Maybe you do," Ben told him, trying to sound earnest and regretful. "But that doesn't matter anymore. None of it does. What do you mean? The god asked, unprepared for a reaction like that and still trying to keep up his appearance of shame. You'll know soon enough. What matters is that I'm here now to offer you your freedom. Nance, if you can answer a question, that is. What? What question? The offer was already far outside of what the god had been prepared for, having never expected that an opportunity would come so early and felt like he was seeing a way out he never could have hoped for, with the chance to escape that damned world once he got it. All he needed to do was answer whatever question the stupid mortal had, unprepared for the power Ben held. Ben let the construct of himself he'd created melt away into nothing, replacing it with 4 new ones that looked nothing like him yet were intimately familiar to the watching god. The evil deity flinching back in genuine horror that had nothing to do with any attempted deception, as before him stood impossible ghosts from his past. His 4 fellow gods he'd driven to kill each other. No, he whispered, the shape he'd contorted himself into to try and appease Ben, slipping away to a chaotic storm instead. No, you can't be here. Why did you trick us? Ben screeched in one's voice, speaking for the others too. Why did you betray us? You took our world for yourself, and this is what you let happen to it. You thought you would get away with all of this. No, you're wrong, Nance yelled. I don't know what you think happened, but dash. He didn't get to say more. Still disguised as the 4 gods Nance had killed before the founding of that world, each Ben descended on him, delivering the torment he needed to for the experience he desired. Out in the real world, still surrounded by trees, Ben's true body gave a satisfied nod. A fresh god meant fresh experience, and with each one he used, he grew better at obtaining it. He was sure that he'd be able to make his current one last for a while before he'd need to change it out for the next model. Good news, I got some more levels, Ben told his god that night. Which ones? Which do you think? Ugh. Ben, please stop being so good at this before someone gets it into their head that you're too dangerous to be allowed to exist. I think some gods up here already believe that. Sure, but I more meant when they start thinking it to the point that anyone is going to be tempted to act on it. And if they do, then what? They kill me, shoot me straight to godhood, and then I use the soul crystals I've already been making to pray to myself to use all of the faith I'll have waiting and the power I should be ascending with to immediately kill them. I'm now at the 5th level of evil god of sacrilege. I think it's in everyone's best interest that I don't get up there anytime soon. No, technically it's in everyone's best interest to kill you immediately, so that you can't accumulate any more skill and power before you die in the future. At this rate, it will be what? Another month before you level it again. Hard to say. My authorities went up too and they dropped sacrilege's level threshold, so I'd give an estimate of between 3 and 4 weeks, though if I get more levels to my authorities in the meantime then that might drop even lower. Those skills do seem to like to level together. And I hate hearing that. You promise that whenever you die you're just going to keep to the gods you like and whatever church you end up building, right? You're not going to go and conquer the universe, are you? I mean, I think I'd be better than the guy currently doing it. Ben, don't worry, he laughed. I don't want to rule over the gods. Even if there's a couple I might make sure to keep in their place if I can, so you don't need to worry about me playing conqueror. I'll hang with you and whatever other gods I can get along with and hopefully spend some nice, quality time also bumming around the mortal plane at the same time if my skills let me manage it. Thera's going to be down there for a long while and Mora's going to be there forever. I'll have plenty enough to keep me busy. Alright, good. And besides, why would I conquer the gods with threats and violence when I'm going to have a far easier job taking over the planet with the financial power I'll leave behind and the political power that having control of so many of my inventions will give me? I can only do so much to earn you any believers with the lifetime I've got. But when I'm my own god, I think I can devote a few thousand years to converting believers away from any god I dislike to build my faith base. We already talked about the fact that I'll be able to offer demigod surgeries to anyone who wants to convert to me, and seeing as how I'm the only person able to create souls, I'm the only one able to grant powerful soul modification in godhood too. Let's be real. Any mortal who wants power is going to flock to me. It's going to be great. Not the word I would use, his god groaned. Let's put a hold on the frighteningly realistic discussion of the sort of power and religious base you're going to be able to claim for yourself as a god. Is there anything from today I need to know about? Not really. Changed out my god crystal for another. Discovered that the new forbidden god I took was an evil god of his world who tricked the others he ruled with into killing each other. Spent a bit of time pretending to be those gods back from the dead to mix some psychological torture into my physical torture. You know, pretty normal stuff. Alright, I suppose it's not the most shocking to find out that one of the forbidden gods was evil even before they abandoned their world, but let's not go oversharing the rest you just said with anyone else, shall we? Hey! Who else am I going to tell? And you? Any horrific nightmares going on in the world or with your faith I need to know about? None more than usual, although a request from the siren gods came for you. Yeah? What sort? They were hoping you'd meet with Mirian again if you could make the time, Callie too, I suppose. It sounds like she's struggling with adjusting, and while her gods are trying to help, the difference between them means she can't be fully comfortable no matter how much they're trying to make her so. Even if she knows all speak like everyone else, the chance to exchange some words in her native tongue seems like it might be good for her. All right, I should be able to spare some time in a couple days. Ben nodded, sympathizing with both the woman and her daughter. The two had been thrown into a new world completely unprepared. At the whims of a god they both should have been able to rely entirely on as both a partner and a father. Add in that their release came in the middle of an interstellar war, and it was plain to see that the emotional struggle must have been intense. As the one who freed them, he could at least try to help a bit. Thank you, I'll let them know, but I'm sure Mirian will appreciate it. I've been keeping up with them a bit, but, well, this world is different from the one they left, and Callie's been basically isolated since her birth. It's an adjustment for both of them. Yeah, I get it, he sighed. A brand new world and what's basically the apocalypse with it. I've got some experience figuring out how to adjust to it. If I ever figure out how to interact with that weird intangible mythic item and find out that it's also holding people, I'm going to react poorly. Just remember that one's maker is currently dead as well, Myriad pointed out, with the disastrous opening of the puzzle leaving that other item looked at with significantly more suspicious eyes, even if few in the heavens above were going to come out and say it. After what had just happened with the sirens, any mysterious item was bound to be viewed far less charitably than they had been before, whether that suspicion was justified or not. And anything else then? Some horrific plan you want to give me a heads up about? No, nothing like that. Although I guess you should consider keeping an eye out tomorrow. Hate hearing that. Don't be coy. No, this really isn't a big deal, he sighed. This morning, when we talked about plans to try and awaken Connect, I'm just going to try one of the options I don't actually think is going to work, and I'm going to spend the day praying I'm wrong. Standing in an open field, to Ben's mana sense, it felt more like he was in the heart of some magical storm. The entire area was lit up with all affinities of the power and at a density that felt almost too thick to peer through, with the only reason he could being that one's mana sense wasn't tied to the presence of eyes. His own vision was technically clear, but trying to experience both at the same time made it feel like it should have been obscured for the vast volume of power around him as the spirits and elementals of the world had gathered to help him attempt to break through his limit. Gotta say, when I asked if you could arrange this, I wasn't expecting so many elementals to gather too, Ben said to Thera by his side, his girlfriend politely trying to not let on that she was hoping he'd fail, so he'd have no excuse to go off to get himself killed, even if she'd still set up his request of gather as many spirits in the world as she could. It looks like they like me more than I thought. When I asked the spirits around, the elementals nearby offered to join too, and I guess word got around. I don't think I've ever seen so many in one place before. Ha! Elemental Princess is going to have a great ring to it. Say that again and I'll fight you. I am a friend of elementals, says so in my titles and everything. Absolutely not their princess. Don't be so harsh, sweetheart, Abris said at her side. It's good to be loved. It means you'll have people in your corner if you need them. And the mana-based are all rather potent allies. I can be friends and allies with them without needing them to devote themselves to me. Thank you very much. Ben almost said it seemed too late for that, but chose to hold his tongue in the end. Within that field were hundreds of thousands of elementals, millions of spirits, and all but two of the great spirits, waiting to help him specifically at Thera's request. Vividus and Nox had both specifically not been invited considering that Mora had come with them, but other than that, It felt like a world-changing level of power, all confined to a single field. And as absolutely horrifying as it is that she was able to gather this much power in one place, time to see if this will work. All right, well, I'm ready if everyone else is. Thera? Got it. She nodded before calling out with both her voice and mana. Everyone, could you all squeeze in here as close as possible? We're about to start. With her request being met with immediate movement, Ben found that they'd given him room to spare when it came to the limits of Connect, with the only ones who really needed the space being great spirits like Abris who held a form they didn't want to give up. With everyone centered around Thera though, using her own dense mana she was spewing out to let them take advantage of her presence. Ben did exactly what he'd intended when he asked her to organize that. He reached out with his soul and, all at once, connected to the millions of individuals within his range, all in an attempt to push himself over the edge. And got nothing for it. He wasn't sure if it was even really putting any strain on Connect, but he knew it wasn't putting any on his mind either. A crowd like that was easy to deal with, and while it might have been experience for both skills, bringing him a bit closer to the awakening he hoped for, it wasn't enough to make the difference he craved. Yeah, he sighed to himself. Knew that wasn't going to work, but I'm still disappointed. God, I really just need this win. You have 4 third-tier skills, you really don't need this win. Considering that getting it is part of my overall goal of saving this stupid world, I actually kind of do. Ugh, whatever. I'll go for a couple more minutes and then call it to an end. With those minutes not bringing any change either. Eventually Ben had to accept it and let out a sigh before speaking up. Okay. Well, thanks for coming everyone. Really appreciate it, but now I'll let you all get back to your business. There's nothing else to do here. No luck then? Thera asked despite the obviousness of it. With no flash of mana, it was clear he hadn't gained a new third-tier awakening, but he still hung his head. Not even a new level or a single new skill to go with it. I'd just been linked to more minds than someone might ever touch it once again. Some of them being exceptionally powerful too, mind you, and I got nothing for it. Ugh. How am I ever going to make this work? Well, if you're done then you can worry about that while we head home so dash. Ah, Thera. Her father interrupted. While I and the other originals are going to use this small gathering to talk to the new great spirits, would you mind stopping in to see your mother instead of sneaking off through the other gate you keep in the city? Why? She asked through narrowed eyes, instantly suspicious in a way that left her father shaking his head. Because she misses her daughter, obviously. Still, Thera kept her doubts, her gaze eventually falling on the child she'd brought with her before getting a flash of understanding. She wants to see Mora again, doesn't she? A guess that instantly had her father looking guilty, the great spirit caught, even if he did his best to cover it. Ah, well, I won't deny that since you've spent your life making it clear you don't want children. She's rather excited to have a grandchild of sorts and would appreciate it if you brought him by more. She does want to see you and Ben as well, and she's just been working so hard. She'd really appreciate it. Sighing, she looked over at Mora, wanting to see what he would say since he was sure to bear the brunt of the succubus queen's affection, with the boy shrugging. I don't mind. She seemed nice when we met, and if it will make her happy, shouldn't we do it? He asked, the opposite of what Thera had hoped for and leaving her defeated. Fine, we'll stop in. It probably won't be too bad. Doubt that, Ben kept to himself, looking at the two and seeing something that she'd grown too used to and that her father hadn't mentioned, viewing the change as something more akin to how the other great spirits might choose to present themselves to the world than anything significant. That was going to be Polinia's first time seeing Mora in the body he'd made for himself. Knocking on the meeting room they were directed to, they briefly got to see the queen, surrounded by advisors and with an exhausted look in her eye, come to life the moment she spotted the three, her absent daughter making the perfect excuse for a break. Everyone, we'll be putting a pause to things here to stop for lunch. But Your Majesty, one spoke up, we're in the middle of dash. Starting our lunch break, yes. Have one of the maids bring your meals up while I see what my family needs. Silencing the rest with a look, she walked over and, without a word, scooped Mora up and carried him out of the room, forcing Ben and Thera to follow. Really? Just perfect timing, you two, Polania said as she led them to the lounge. Those slave drivers are so hard to convince into stopping meetings partway through unless there's an excuse. I really feel like you shouldn't be doing that, Thera sighed. Was that anything important? MMH, just discussions for how we'll be managing the defense of the main city by the time the third wave reaches its end. Assuming by that point the majority of military forces across the world will be wiped out. Mother, that sounds incredibly important. We'll go home, so go finish that. Never. Every major and minor government on the planet is having these sorts of discussions by this point and has been having them for centuries before the first wave arrived. A single break is not going to make things any worse, she told them as they reached the side room, sitting down on a chair while keeping Mora comfortably in her lap as she did. Her arms wrapped around him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Anyway, we have more important things to discuss, like who this little cutie is and why you didn't bother bringing my grandson if you were going to visit. What? Thera asked, only just realizing that her mother hadn't yet seen Mora's new body and had no clue what he currently looked like. Okay, wait, no. Did you really grab a kid not knowing who it was? I know he's with you and I know he's positively adorable, that's good enough. Tell me you adopted a second one and I'm going to be over the moon.
All right? No.
That's Mora. He made a body for himself, same way Dad did. It just follows his domain. Hello, Grandma, Mora said politely as he turned his head to look back. Remembering what she'd insisted he call her the last time while Pelenia herself froze from the new information, picking him up and turning him to stare at his face for a moment before pulling him into a bigger hug. Oh my goodness. I didn't even recognize you. Gosh, even if you look different, you're still such a cutie, but... Wait. She stopped, seeing exactly what Ben expected to bring the biggest reaction. How did you make that body? I grew it, Mora answered honestly, with Thera only beginning to realize what a bad idea letting her mother hear any deeper bit of that answer would be, but was too late to stop it. From? The Queen prompted, looking far too interested in the answer in a way that went completely unnoticed by Mora. I smushed some of Thera and Ben's cells together. It seemed like the best option at the time. Oh, I bet it did. The Queen grinned so wide it seemed the smile was going to split her face. The leader of one of the more powerful nations on that world left practically vibrating in excitement. Oh, and you really do look just like them too, don't you? You've got a bit of Ben's frame and nose, along with my daughter's cheekbones and ears. I guess you take more after Thera, but since her father's heritage doesn't look like it came through at all, that means you look like me too. She started getting up as she said it, still carrying Mora and walking to the door, only being stopped as her daughter materialized a wall in front of her. Mother, where do you think you're going with him? Back to my meeting, of course. Now that I know, I obviously have to show him off to everyone there, don't you think? The staff too. I need to make sure they can recognize him and know to give him everything he asks for. Yeah, that's not happening. Either be normal about this or we're leaving. I don't think it's fair to ask anyone to be normal about this. Her mother pouted before sitting back down, still not letting go of Mora. But fine, I suppose I can contain myself, so long as Ben provides me with a family portrait of you all, that is. With a plain look his way, Ben materialized a small photo of himself, Thera, and Mora before turning it Pelenia's way, getting to see her eyes light up for it. Oh, one of him and myself as well. Mom, seriously? Thera sighed. I think we're just gonna go. Oh, don't be like that. I didn't get any pictures of you until your adult life. I don't want to miss out on getting all of the ones of him I can while I can. Now, Ben, stay in your future mother-in-law's good books. Would you? Yeah, it's easy enough. He gave in, materializing another of just those two and left Thera's mother looking satisfied. Good. The Queen nodded. In that case, how are all of you? How's my silly sister too? I suppose. We're good and she's good, Thera answered, a bit more willing now that her mother looked like she'd calmed down. Although Auntie Sonia isn't home too often now. She travels for healing a fair bit, and I think she also spends a lot of nights wherever Uncle Falk is staying at. He doesn't come home more than every couple of weeks by this point. I suppose godhood is keeping the old ape busy, she muttered, her focus moving to Ben. Does your own have you the same? Oh no, I'm actually fairly sure the gods want to get as little use out of me as possible. The problem for them is that I'm just so gosh darn handy. Sometimes they have no choice but to accept and pay me. Ha! Glad to hear you're making the most of it. And then what about the family on my end? Surely there's some exciting gossip you're interested in asking about. Nope, Thera told her, knowing where her mother was going and wanting no answer to it. Boo! I'm telling you anyway. It seems Bloom might end up enjoying quite the love life. I really don't want to hear about this. Thera tried again, getting no mercy as her mother went on. After you spoke to us, we tried to talk to him as delicately about it as we could, but he's grown quite a fondness for the Dryads working those fields. She chuckled. He says they're friends and seems to mean it, but at least we've made him aware that they might want something more, and that hasn't stopped him from visiting every day. We don't need to know. Well, I personally think it will be exciting if he has a few dozen children. Pelania laughed. Do you think they'll all be daughters? He may choose to look male, but since he's genderless, I'd be surprised if that trait passes down. Agreed, Ben added, still feeling his own touch of interest on the topic that drove Thera to nudge his arm. Ben, it's bad enough when you're being a researcher about this sort of thing by yourself. I don't need you discussing the matter with my mother. What's the problem? Pelania asked. Thera, sweetheart, you were the only half-spirit for so long. I'm personally thrilled to see more come into the world. 100 years from now, they'll be the closest people you can relate to, and besides, they'll be family. I'm sure there'll be some unique challenges to being a half-spirit that you could help guide them through as they get older. Unless any other great spirit falls in love with a race that holds a passive magic, I'm pretty sure they won't have anything like the issues I went through. You say that now, but in a couple more years, your father and I will be giving you more siblings than you can handle. Pelania laughed, seeming all too genuine in the statement, even if it carried the larger implication that it would only be happening if the world was still around for it to happen. But even beyond the passive magic issue, that's not like it's the only thing you'll be able to help guide them through. It's still a bit early to be certain, but it already seems like Saren is going to have the same issues with his light magic that you had with your Earth growing up. For him and any other half-spirits that come along in the next decade or so, you'll be a valuable teacher. You know the tricks for getting past it and growing to the point you can call yourself one of the more powerful people on the planet. That will be plenty for any other kids who come along. Don't you think things might have been easier if you had a role model to look up to while you were growing up? I think this conversation has taken a weird turn, she muttered. Exactly how many kids are you planning on having if it's going to be more than I can handle? Enough that I'm going to need you available to babysit for at least the next 30 years. Since there's going to be a big age difference, it's important to be around to develop a healthy relationship with your siblings, don't you think? Hey, how many more kids could your parents have before it started feeling weird? Strange question. Aso laughed as the two of them walked through town together. Got an unexpected sibling on the way? Ugh. My mother has made it pretty clear that she's planning on more if things go well, since there's now a way to manage my charm issue. Which wasn't a big deal when I thought it might be 1 or 2, but I'm beginning to worry that she's thinking double digits. Some competition for the throne then, the other girl laughed. I hear that can get messy. Elected matriarchy. I'm not taking over for her as things are, and no other hypothetical children will either. What, you can't? Do succubi have some rule about letting the children of their previous queen have a shot? Okay, no, the main requirement to run for the role is completing an alias trial, so if I wanted to then I'm technically qualified, but I absolutely refuse to, and frankly, I don't think anyone would want me having that position anyway. Opinions about me in Stonewall aren't exactly too different from opinions I'd get to hear whispered about me growing up. Maybe you'll need to compete for a different position then? Aso teased. Currently only one spirit princess, but if you get some siblings, you'll be left competing over who gets to be Spirit Queen. Spirit Queen? The spirits swarming her echoed, playing with the idea amongst themselves, with some sounding far too into it. Ignore her. Please. She addressed the surroundings before focusing more on Aso. Please don't give anyone any ideas. That's an even faker position than Spirit Princess, and I do not want a new title coming along with it. I personally think it would be fun. But okay. In that case, what's actually on your mind? What? Nothing. Well, I guess I feel like I've hit a bit of a wall. But that's a personal issue. It's not a huge deal. The fact that she'd apparently given anything away couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassing. But it was the same thing that had been on her mind for ages by that point. She didn't know what she could do to grow further beyond her limits. She didn't know how to reach the third tier. After all, she wasn't Ben. She couldn't make plans upon plans to optimize her existence, and she didn't have a mind that would let her cheat time itself. All she held was her accumulated knowledge, a few handy points in her status, and a time limit. Even if the odds were slim, there was hope she'd become a soul mage. But by that point, she didn't know what else she might do to make it happen. It wasn't even a matter of what she knew or not having the talent. It ultimately came down to not having the time to get there. And I know that it's the sort of thing that can come with a big enough achievement, but I have no clue what I could possibly achieve to make this happen. She sighed to herself. Add in the fact that I'm helping less at any hospital, and it feels like my odds are dropping. The worst part was that it was never something she would have considered trying to achieve in the time they had left if the idea hadn't been put in her head. But now that it was there, it felt inescapable. Everyone had to do their part for the survival of the planet, but it felt like she was on the edge of being able to do so much more, with only one big, impossible threshold holding her back from getting there. With none of that being anything she wanted to make Aso aware of. The girl was her friend and Thera trusted her, but the town already knew she was a second tier. She didn't want to deal with anyone having too good of an idea of just how far along the skill she was, even if the other healer tried to reassure. I think you're worrying too much, Aso told her. Some things take time, right? Just because you might have slowed down doesn't mean you're not going to get there. I mean, depending on what wall you think you've hit, it might be more shocking if you didn't need a bit more time. Well, that's true enough, she admitted. All things being relative, she really had only become a contender for her life magic recently in comparison to the length of time anyone might be before having any real hope of crossing that boundary. She knew her uncle had been at it for years, if not decades, and while Ben's insane brain may not have been as long, his sacrilege had a good few years at that level along with plenty of failed attempts to awaken it behind it. Even with all of her mana and her magic authority, hoping that she'd be able to get there so soon was just unreasonable extra pressure to put on herself. Maybe I'd be able to manage it if my brain was insane too, she sighed. Unfortunately, I'm just too well adjusted, I guess. A small joke to herself to lighten the mood that spawned an unexpected ideal, leaving her brow to crinkle in thought. Thera? Oh, don't worry, just had a small idea to try later, it's not important. For now, wanna grab lunch? It was a thought she needed to sit on for a bit, and lunch was the perfect time to decide if it was a completely outlandish one. She may not have been insane, but could she make herself even just a little bit to try and raise her odds? Walking into the shop, it wasn't any of the numerous Bens or Mora working there who noticed her first but instead Delaire, the girl looking the right way at the right time to give her a happy wave and call as she walked in. Hey Thera. Hey Delaire. Hey Mora. You two having fun today? Absolutely. We're making a trebuchet. A small one, Ben clarified. As if the fact that the entire space of the shop wasn't filled with a siege weapon wasn't a clue enough. Just something nice and reasonable to get the principles down. But you promised if we do well enough then we could all make a full-sized one later. Alright, I did promise that. I was just hoping I'd get a different chance to bring it up with Thera later. A comment Thera couldn't allow to go unanswered. You aren't going to test it on the town, right? Of course not. Not going to do it in a way that'll end up scaring anyone? I mean, people can get so scared about every little thing. Who's really to say? Ben. Fine, before we do it I'll mention it to Cecily. She can tell the rest of the town and anyone else who wants to come can watch, nice and simple. And you won't be aiming it at anything you shouldn't be hitting, right? I'll build a variety of fun targets for the kids' shooting pleasure. Okay, good. In that case, I came to borrow whichever one of you I can right now. Just wanted to pick your brain a bit if I can. Yeah, always. I'll give you the real deal since I'm not enchanting right now. Come on. The real Ben, not being the one with the kids but instead one that was sitting to the side, doing some intricate wood carving, got up and walked to the back room to give them some privacy, waiting for Thera to speak once they were alone. Okay, she started. So I kind of have a small favor to ask. Sure. Let's hear it. So, you know how you have the most insane mind in the universe? This generally isn't how you should start when asking a favor. But sure, it's been said from time to time. Okay. Well, I was wondering if you'd help me get a particular mind skill. A request that instantly had his eyes lighting up. Ben leaned just a bit more forward when the words left her mouth. Finally seeing the beauty of mind skills, are you? Absolutely. Then, what are you thinking? Admittedly, I don't know how to get you complex mind or a thought speed skill, but if you're looking at parallel thought or mental expansion, then I can set up a training routine, easy. Hell, we could get you both today. I could pull you in my head and get you to practice both, while I monitor your thoughts until you actually get them and dash. I appreciate it. She cut him off before he could get too excited. But those weren't the ones I was thinking of. Oh, you sure? Both would be super handy to a mage, and having them natively would probably be a lot easier on you than how it feels using them on a circlet.
Yeah, no.
Thanks, but I'm sure. Your loss, he deflated. In that case, what are you thinking? I want to get alien thought structure, specifically from the great spirits of the world. When it came to trying to awaken her life magic, it seemed like the best idea she had by far. Spirits thought about their magic in completely different ways from mortals, with their only weakness when it came to the magics they held being their inability to grow. A weakness she, as a mortal, didn't hold. If she could think like them, then she could try to apply that mode of thought to how she used her magic, hopefully lowering the barrier to cross beyond even what her paternal race could do. Oh, I see. Yeah, absolutely not. What? Come on, why not? You're the only one I can ask for help with this, Ben. Yeah, that's exactly why. Thera, when I got that skill, I was already midway through Unnatural Mind and had long since been thinking with my soul, and getting that still hurt like a bitch. Hell, awakening it drove me insane. Trying to apply that to a proper brain is not going to be pretty. I'd place it at 50-50 odds of it just outright killing you and the rest of the odds leaving you a vegetable. I'm not going to do something that I think will kill my girlfriend. Think, but don't know, she pointed out. I'm already half spirit, maybe it won't be so bad. Except I've been in your head and I can tell you with certainty, your mental structure is significantly closer to a succubi's than it is to any spirits. I am not trusting your heritage to protect you. Besides, I got this skill as a result of the careless mistake of a dead god. I don't even know if it's possible for anyone else to gain it, let alone for me to somehow help you get it. But you can try, she pointed out. You don't have to test it on me, but you can at least do some experiments to see if it is even possible. Don't act like me asking didn't instantly fill your head with ideas about how you might do it. I really should have kept a few details of how my own mind works to myself then if anyone is just going to ask me any insane thing and know I'm going to start trying to figure out how to pull it off, intentionally or not. And, Thera went on, if it really is still as dangerous as you seem to think after testing it out a bit, then I'll give up. I don't want to kill myself, Ben, but you're the one who first brought up the idea of getting me to the 3rd tier. It's in my head now, and I'm not going to be satisfied until I've at least explored the ideas I've had to get it done. Fine. He gave in. When I'm done with the kids today, I'll go off and work on seeing if this is at all possible or if it's just insane. So when I do end up killing every demon, I'm going to have to test my ideas on we can move on to less insane ways of trying to get you to awaken, right? I've only been trying less insane ways to this point, but yes, thank you, she agreed. Thera understood where he was coming from. She couldn't deny some worry about it herself, but it felt like a path to improvement that she didn't want to miss out on. As unlikely as it was to succeed, it was an option, and if it would work, she wanted to take it for all it was worth.